So, what we're planning on talking about today is Rook versus Lum matchup. We're going to talk over sort of general features of it, things that we think are interesting, and also do some more detailed replay analysis stuff of the way we've played it out. Janet and I, we've played a matchup a decent amount, not to exhaustion, certainly, but
Yeah, we're not playing perfectly, but we have a generally good understanding of where the game is, where all the mix-ups happen, what each player should be doing.
yeah. So it'll be fun to talk about as we go over stuff. Where are spots where we think we're playing out our rules properly? Where do we think there's room for improvement or outright mistakes? That kind of stuff going on.
Yeah,
And
where do we think there's stuff we've underexplored and so don't know whether we should be doing or not, or what we've figured out based on we think we were exploring it back then, and now watching it back, we realise that that's a thing that was not worth it. Like there was some cartwheel usage that I was spotting myself doing, watching through these, that was really a good thing to explore and figure out. And there was some very similar looking cartwheel usage that was utterly terrible.
yeah.
And so working out the difference is very important. I think the difference is to do with advantage frames minus jump time.
Yeah. Some critical stuff to figure out. Cartwheel, but like every interaction's got some interesting corners to it, I think, in the matchup as well.
Like I was using it off you doing forward jump stuff, forward jump A, and it was working marvelously. It was just hitting you out of whatever you did, getting me 3 damage combos. But then I saw myself do it off after you did a thunderclap. Still a slow move, but much less committal, leaves you much more free to do things. It was just a whiff thunderclap on Oki because you didn't know how advantaged you were, and so you went for the thing that might work, and it didn't. It turned out it was a bit pre-meaty.
Yes.
It was a weird situation, and what happened was you vinesed me, and I just died.
Oh, I just remembered too. In Discord, we've got our call going. I'm gonna share my Fantasy Strike there if you want to use that for reference.
Oh yeah,
We've
that
got
will be
stuff
a
playing.
bit more synchronized than the stream, won't it?
Yeah. So, okay. Also, hi Dante. Good to see you.
That was a very fun time for you to start roboting.
Oh, great.
It
Yeah.
just sounded like you were about to say something very important. It was, So yeah.
Discord and I have some problems every now and again, unfortunately. But hopefully it's fine.
that's just the way of Discord.
Yeah. So we got Dante here too, and I'm hoping that we can have some dialogue back and forth. If you folks in the chat have any ideas or want to ask questions about stuff, I'll keep a close eye on it. I think I've got a setup that'll support it pretty well, and we can talk over it too. So
Okay, so are we just going to be watching through this, or are we going to be jumping to timestamps?
I was thinking of just having some of these matches playing in the background as we talk about general game planning goals and that sort of thing, and then we can come back and look at specific stuff if you like, because I know you've got
Okay.
notes over some of these early. Or actually, you know what would be even better? Hold
I
on.
think I've got most of the games that I've got notes on at this point.
Excellent.
How many
excellent.
are there total? There's like
There's
8,
like
aren't there?
we did like 20, something like that. I bet we can. Go
We are definitely counting them the same as well, right?
I think so. It's some.
I'll check. So I'm doing the ones from the 6th of May. I guess that makes sense that you could filter it through Friend TV.
Yeah, it's just I don't know who we want to put up here. We can see if there's Shobs. And
Organist
Organist,
is going to be good on
yeah.
both sides of it.
We'll have. You've got to be in here somewhere. Oh wait, you're
yeah,
right
you were
there at
both
the
in.
end. All right.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 6th of May, and there are. There are 19 total. I do not have most of them. I've got 6. As in, I've got 6 I've got notes on, and one of them is partial.
Yeah. One thing Dante mentioned is, not sure if it's been done, but would love some analysis of Geiger and Rook. I think that would be pretty cool to do sometime too, Dante. I'd like to play it more. I haven't got a lot of opportunities, to be honest.
Okay, so this is from the start. We're seeing Organist do some fairly safe round start stuff. Might be a bit risky against some rooks, but in this case, this is a rook who just did no committal stuff on round start, backed off,
Yeah.
Organist took advantage and then just dealt with the armor.
Well,
Noting that neutral A into B is really good versus armor if you got the advantage to get the cancel into the roll before the armored move hits you. Which is something I noted in my notes. It wasn't something I really thought about until I was looking through our matches. I saw myself do it once and it seems useful.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Lots of
too,
thunderclouds to beat armor as well.
was gonna mention too. I think we can have this playing in the background before we get into talking about specific replay stuff, or like looking at it more as a sort of decoration here. I wanted to just talk about general game plan and goals, I guess, of each side here.
Okay, so my understanding of the matchup is the general game plan is both Lum and Rook want to be at mid-screen, but Lum wants the advantage frames. So Lum will spend all of his time to get more time, and that's vulnerable to callouts from Rook, like vines and things. If they land, that's disastrous. But as long as it keeps going, and that means that Lum gets more and more time to do these things, just get more and more chip. Or maybe Rook goes for one of the committal callouts but gets it wrong and it just doesn't work, and that's big damage, very explosive.
Yeah.
Apart from that, Lum's goal is Oki pressure and corner pressure. But everything revolves around getting dice out, around getting mini Lums out. Both of those things depend on getting bombs and clouds out. A lot of it depends on just lots of melon usage from the right spacing. So the spacing where it sort of hit Rook's foot. So it's the furthest melon that is still a real threat.
Yeah. The way I think I look at it is for...
Like that melon Organist is doing there. That's about the right distance. It's a little further away, but that's fine. If they're backing off, that's great. It's only further away because Menowap is walking back.
I think for Rook, Rook's plan is actually, I think, fairly standard. At least like his winning condition. It's like in a lot of matches, Rook really wants to either get a knockdown directly or force some kind of like blocked forward jump A to get mix-up chances. It's always like his strongest thing, and that applies across the board. As soon as he forces a block, he gets the three-way mix started.
Yeah, like that.
But yeah, perfect example. With
that was a jump in. A jump in then becomes a mix-up, which itself nests into more mix-ups. If you're at the key health point of 2 or less health as Lum, you're probably dead. Although, if you've got meter, you can contest things, which is something I haven't really optimized yet. But the delay jackpot is something there is a lot of work to be done on, I think.
Yeah.
Because it depends specifically on what options they are likely to choose. Like if they're likely to neutral A, you can delay jackpot to trade with that. I don't know if you can beat it. Maybe you can. Probably not. Because it would need 5 or fewer active frames, and it's Rook.
Right, yeah. Neutral A is 8, but real quick, with the other stuff, I think that, so like Rook wants a knockdown or a block jump in, but to get that, I think sometimes you can get Earthquake directly to punish an item toss or something kind of committal from Lum. But
yeah,
more
I think
often,
item toss is the key thing there, yeah.
More often, Rook has to get Lum close to the corner to force Lum into using some sort of committal option to get away from Rook's stuff. Because Lum's pretty slippery, good about getting out of stuff, so getting closer to the corner forces the kind of mix-ups that directly lead to knockdown and damage, the kind of things Rook needs.
Yeah, the good thing about this particular matchup is I think Earthquake's stronger than usual because of the way item toss works and the way Lum has to be grounded for an extended period of time to use it, and yeah, that means Earthquake becomes a much more real mix-up than usual in regards to how freely you can get it out.
Yeah,
Normally it's very specific setups for you to bring out an actual threatening Earthquake that they aren't just going to jump out of. You have to, and there's a lot more risk to it, whereas Rook doesn't have to threaten Vines necessarily to threaten Earthquake and have it be real.
In a lot of matchups, like zoner matchups, just doing predictive Earthquake to call out projectile startup is like a pretty standard thing. And this has overlap with that, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, except with Lum in particular, it's not a straightforward projectile, so Rook can also Earthquake closer. Because he's not going to land on a projectile.
Yeah,
The
it's
worst that happens is he gets hit out of the recovery by coin, and that's great.
yeah, it's not so bad. Yeah, Jube mentions always felt that Melon makes Earthquake worse than usual. Melon's pretty strong. I think what Melon does is it lets Lum start pressure in different ways, but what it does for Rook is it makes Vines really strong, where Vines usually mostly kind of questionable.
Yeah, but I get hit by vines all the time just because you can't wait and react with Melon because that's as I talked about the game plan earlier, you're buying advantage frames with everything you do.
Yeah,
So if you give up those advantage frames, you give up your strong sequence of moves. That just means Rook gets to counterplay immediately.
yeah,
If you're waiting to react with Melon, Rook reacts to your waiting.
sure. Yeah, Rook's quite strong in the air in this matchup in general. I think you just have weird.
Yeah, in
If
general, the best I'm happy with in the air versus an airborne Rook is I get away. I don't get hit by something.
yeah. Oh, what a good combo.
Oh,
The
it
last
wasn't.
two could have.
It wasn't the full combo.
Yeah,
Ah.
but it is close enough. I think so. Yeah. Rook wants to maybe get an Earthquake on an item toss, which is nice, but it's not gonna happen all the time. And so Rook really wants to take space, pushing toward the corner. And
Yeah, I think the time it
force
happens
the-
most often is if Rook has just been pressuring Lum and Lum just gets away. Rook has that bit of advantage, and Lum is specifically incentivized to time it in the way that happens to get caught by Earthquake a lot, which is sort of back jump, immediate item toss in the hope something good happens.
Yeah,
And that immediate item toss gets caught out by Rook just doing
Right.
immediate Earthquake. It's synced up.
it's a big thing about Rook wants to understand when Lum wants to throw items and exploit it as best they can.
Yeah, and there's a very specific rhythm to it that Lum struggles not to follow because of the thing I mentioned where you're getting as much advantage as you can. And often in a scramble situation, you still fall back on that impulse.
Sure.
I think something that I need to work on and might be strong is breaking that rhythm in key situations because the rhythm's very valuable, much more important for Lum than Rook most of the time. But I think in situations like, say, Rook does forward jump A, Lum rolls under it. At that point, the rhythm is favouring Rook because Rook does Earthquake, Lum does item toss, the Earthquake wins. Rook jumps at Lum, Lum does item toss, it's not a coin, the jump wins. Rook does Vines, Lum jumps, and it's not a back jump, it's not an empty back jump, the Vines wins. There's a lot of things that if Lum sticks to the rhythm, the Rook will just win out in many situations that if Lum waits to react, or Lum, yeah, were you just seeing a missed punish?
Yeah, well, I saw there's that nice Earthquake knockdown and then a
Yeah.
back off full set.
Yeah, that's the painful thing about this matchup for most Rooks. I think they struggle to know when to back off and when not to.
Yeah.
And that's
it's
not a
tricky.
thing about them; it's a thing about Lum. It's hard to understand it's hard to understand where you're safe when you're a big, bulky, slow character, and Lum is Lum.
Yeah, he's
And
slippery.
Lum is tossing out melons and coins and rolling at you and doing pokes and back A and things.
Yeah.
You don't know when you have to hold back and when you can't afford not to, when you have to jump, when Earthquake is valuable. That's stuff you need to know to do well in the matchup. And when you do know it, that's a huge edge for Rook. It's not like it makes it Rook advantage hugely, but it means it's not huge disadvantage,
Yeah.
which it is otherwise. If you don't have that understanding of what the actual game plan is and how to execute it and when to switch between the different phases of it, as Rook, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And I think that's what most people's understanding of the matchup is, as either watching or seeing that version of it. Because it's really easy to see a warped version of a matchup where the game plan's a bit off and doesn't quite work out.
Yeah.
Like for ages, that was my understanding of the Lum versus Rook matchup. I thought it was minor but noticeable Rook advantage because I was underutilizing dice, because I was scared of it, because I thought Earthquake because I just instinctively got scared of it. I got What was that experiment with the person and the bells and the dogs where they rang
Oh,
the
the
bells when they fed
Pavlov,
the dog?
yeah.
Pavlov. I had a Pavlovian response to dice, pretty much, where every time I diced, Organist would earthquake me. And so I got trained out of using dice.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't aware of it, I didn't recognize what was going on there, and so I didn't start switching to dice when Earthquake wasn't able to work. So instead, I just wasn't using dice. Dice are pretty important versus Rook.
Yep. We'll definitely get into.
Dice are the biggest way of spending advantage to gain more advantage. Rook's in a bomb, you can jump, wait for the explosion to be... Wait for it to be too late for Rook to get out of the explosion in vines or something. You get out dice, you now have a pressure sequence going. Rook can't contest that. Rook can only survive, maybe go for a couple particular callouts, but they don't really contest it. They just make things less bad.
Yeah. And yeah,
So,
we're definitely gonna dig into the sort of specifics of kind of when dice works and all the different important little
Yeah, that's one of those dice moments there. Like Rook went for landslide. I messed up with the landslide punish.
Yeah.
I failed to mash properly, but in theory, what happens there is it's very big Lum favor. Lum gets Oki, corner Oki there.
With dice on the field is very, very strong.
And what dice do are they allow you to get stuff in hitboxes in the air, so Rook can't do anything. They allow you to, missed the throw punish. They weren't ready for it. I think I was probably just guessing that they wouldn't be ready for it.
Yeah.
I do that a lot when it's not a person I know well to be able to do that consistently. But yeah, they extend your pokes. They let you use forward A at a much greater range. They let you use back A. They let you roll with a lot more chip or damage if they try to contest the roll. Normally Rook is very good at contesting roll. Roll with dice? No. That maybe it'll work, generally it won't.
Yeah, there's maybe room. But yes, it's usually pretty questionable. Before we go too much deeper though, I just wanted to kind of come back around to the ways that Lum wins, because I think that's the other point that's good to discuss in detail. So we know that Rook wants to either force like a blocked jump in to get mix-up chances, or like directly punish an item toss, something like that, get an earthquake knockdown. And walking to the corner is usually good for both of those.
So pretty standard, but with certain options stronger than usual.
Yeah, things are...
And with a lot more emphasis on the endless advancing than usual. Normally, Rook can afford to stand still at times. It's all about moving at the right times, whereas it's about blocking at the right times versus Lum.
Right. And for Lum, I think the way that I look at it is he's got a couple different ways he wins, but a lot of it's off of the idea of getting snowballing item advantage. So, like, I think it's Lum, if he can get a mini Lums to stick, especially multiple mini Lums, then he gets to control, like, get more item tosses, control space better. Things like
mini Lums guard against vines. That's valuable. That means you get to melon freely.
Yep.
That even means you get to get dice out freely if you get your meter.
And the things like cherry and cake tosses become positive for Lum too. Whenever he has mini Lums controlling space, Rook can't necessarily move forward to contest them. And whenever that pressure's going on, for Rook to call out and beat Lum's options, even if he makes a quote-unquote correct guess, Rook gets hit for his trouble. Like you just mentioned with vines, if Rook correctly guesses that a melon's coming and uses vines to beat it, he lands on a Lum, he doesn't get the kind of Oki pressure he was wanting to get as a result, you know?
Yeah, so if it's only one mini Lum, that's still a net positive for Rook. He destroyed the snowballing item advantage.
Yeah.
But it's not a win condition for Rook anymore. It's just an escape. It's a 1 damage escape back to neutral.
Exactly. Right. So getting the items to stick on the field, especially the mini Lums, is strong. Another thing to think about is that having Rook in the corner generally makes items stronger too. Rook usually likes having the option of being able to give up a little bit of space to make items threaten him less.
Yeah, whereas in the corner, the usual rule applies of the attacker controls the spacing.
Yeah.
The attacker has full control over that. The most the defender can do is move closer and get hit for their trouble.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely difficult, and the sort of options that Rook has to get much more dangerous.
That was the good thing to talk about just there, by the way. Organist got... I'll just say Lum and Rook. Lum got Dice out. Rook did Earthquake. Normally, often there are many situations where Earthquake is the right play versus getting Dice out. But Rook waited longer than usual and did it from further back.
So, yeah, we'll have to talk about...
what Lum did was Lum had time to get out back A. Back A just meant there were 2 dice there to hit the Earthquake as it landed, which was further back, so it didn't even hit one of the dice as it came down.
Yeah, so there's some weird stuff with dice too. Like Earthquake has a sort of surprisingly good hitbox against some kinds of dice. That's something
and
to
also
look at.
mini Lum. So even if there's a mini Lum there, you can still get both of them.
Right.
It's not like Lum's common situation against, say, Onimaru, where if you roll through one thing, you can't roll through 2 things. So 2 bots is a much bigger problem than 1 bot.
Yeah. So I think going back to game plan stuff. Getting Rook in the corner is strong for Lum. Lum getting many Lums that stick on the field is a big thing. And one last sort of detail to keep in mind is the long-lasting, or I guess delayed sort of items, things like bomb, fireworks, and lightning, the thundercloud. They have the ability to make Lum's super usage safe.
They do 2 key things. They allow dice to come out. They allow jackpot to come out if you're going for jackpot. I personally hugely favour dice because dice mean you get to do your pressure string for a while,
right?
Which is a significant chip and buys a lot of time for item tosses. So it kind of stacks those 2 things together. A jackpot generally outlasts an extended item on the field, so they still get Earthquakes.
Yeah.
And it's only the item advantage. It doesn't get the dice out. Maybe it won't even be a favourable item combination. Maybe it'll just be 4 cherries.
Right.
So it's riskier and doesn't combine the 2 things, whereas dice it's your pressure sequence begins, and now your item advantage begins as well.
Yes.
Because your pressure sequence has begun and those 2 things combine together. And something I've noticed while watching through our replays is Lum's pressure strings aren't actually that item driven. Items are used sparingly to sustain the pressure sequence. They aren't the core of it. The core of it is pokes and melons.
Yeah. Well, like...
Especially
items help
dice
things,
pokes.
Yeah, items help things kind of keep the glue that keeps the pressure together usually, but dice can fill that gap without variance, which is really strong.
Something I saw in one of our matches that we'll get to eventually is I got dice out. You did Earthquakes to destroy 2 of them, so there was only 1 dice out. It was behind you, but I had the advantage from that situation to start my pressure sequence anyway. It wasn't as bad as if you hadn't Earthquake, because then there'd just be 3 dice there. That'd be disastrous.
Yeah.
But I got a melon out, I got an item out. The item was a cake, so that was irrelevant for the pressure sequence, and you got the cake. So I got another melon out. You didn't you recognize the cake. I see that you react to items properly generally, and and after a melon is always a very predictable item to us anyway. React to in the first place. So yeah, but another melon, you didn't really have a way to contest it. You could vines, but you didn't really have a good chance to safely vines there. You could vines on prediction, but if you do that and I roll, you're dead. Because I anti-A you, you're on the ground, I've got a dice out, I've got items out now, I'm pressuring you, that's disastrous. Also, you probably end up cornered because of all the knockback from all of those different things.
Yeah.
So you're hugely disincentivized to find, so I'm pretty safe to do a pressure sequence, like, with lots of melons in. And so a single dice means that I can do many more melons, and the items don't need to consistently be good.
Yeah.
What happened next was I got a coin, you blocked it, I did another melon. That might have been fine had it not been a coin. That could have been anything, and I had good odds of it being safe. Then I did another melon, another item toss, it was a cake. Again, irrelevant to the item, irrelevant to the pressure sequence. So what you get from this is the items don't matter too much if there's dice out. If there's even a single dice out, the incentives shift enough that I can melon a lot. Lum can melon very safely, and there's not much Rook can safely do about it. A lot of melons will go wrong. The freshen sequence will end after some number of melons, but the presence of a dice will generally get about at least 1 damage worth of chip.
One thing real quick, Jude mentioned, imagine if Earthquake could clear mini lums and robots. It can, I'm not sure. Maybe it's that's the core of the joke. It's usually risky, right? Because it's open to all the jump punishes stuff, but it's one of those like every once in a while tools Rook wants to use for sure.
Because Earthquake's a telegraph move, and Lum can then jump in on it, and that's painful.
Get punished, yeah. Same sort of thing with Oni. You don't want to eat 4 because you get caught out of the air with it or something.
Yeah, and something I've noticed today while watching through our replays, and I'm going to work on and going to talk about more later when that bit of replay, is using that Earthquake on the Midilum to get out dice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That makes sense, Jube. I figured. Figured you knew too. If the shockwave broke, then that'd be terrible for everyone. I guess Rook would be happy.
Rook would be delighted. Ooh, I love it when I see just fun dice bounces off the walls. Anyway, other game plan things.
So I think we basically wrapped up the game plan that Lum wants to win, usually by creating some item advantage that snowballs, lets him get a lot of chip pressure, which is good. But I think also important is that in order to escape this kind of pressure, Rook has to make guesses that are the risk associated with them becomes really, really, really high as more items hit the field. It's worse and worse for Rook. So if he wants to break out ever, he has to guess at some point, and that's where he ends up losing a lot of health. So a big challenge for Rook will be, with Lum's plan, is identifying moments where Rook can escape this kind of item pressure, the stuff that lasts, and picking the spots carefully.
Yeah, and what those moments are is they're moments where it sort of coalesces into a mix-up. It's not a mix-up you'll have memorized. It's not a mix-up you'll know, but it's a mix-up you can identify on the fly, and you have to learn to do that. Lum does that all the time. That's one of the cores of Lum gameplay.
Yep.
Creating these mix-up situations and exploiting your opponent's lack of knowledge of it.
Yeah.
Like a really common thing is you do an item toss, it's a coin. So you do a walk-up item, strike or throw mix-up, or you do a jump-in, or something like that. You use the coin to either pressure or do a mix-up. You do bombs to either pressure or do a mix-up. All the time you get these choices between a fairly safe pressure or a very explosive mix-up that it's a safe bet your opponent doesn't recognize.
Yeah. And
if they do recognize it, that's when things get more difficult.
Yeah, it's a thing to sort out, and I think the strength Lum has over Rook, or the thing that Rook has to account for, I guess is maybe the better way to put it, is that you can afford to play safe because Rook's mobility and options are all quite high committal, so even doing the sort of lighter pressure still forces Rook to make decisions that are very risky, where Lum doesn't necessarily have to take on the risk themselves. Things like trying to do a strike throw off of a coin. You don't always have to, though. You can use the coin to cover a melon, and you item toss again, and you get a mini Lum, and now Rook's stuck trying to make a guess where even if he's right, he suffers some kind of damage for it, and Lum doesn't end up in a game-losing position. Yeah,
so it's something it's very analogous to is different people's Oki options. Generally, you have a choice between some strong mix-up you like, maybe some other strong mix-up that's a lot safer, but less explosive as a result, and a safe jump.
Yeah.
So, I saw your Twitch chat thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's similar to that. You get a choice between a mix-up or a safe jump. Mix-up is higher value, safe jump is safe. It's low variance. So the safe jump is the thing you use when you're already winning. The mix-up is the thing you use to get yourself to be winning. If you're already losing, the variance is less of a problem because you're already losing overall from.
And that's a lesson to apply, I think, across the board to your game plan too. In any matchup, you want to think about when you're in a more disadvantaged position, especially low on life, then higher variance mix-ups don't hurt you as much. Taking 5 damage or taking 10 damage or 2 damage, they're all the same if you're at 1 life, right? So
Yeah.
it's very different than like if you're in a safe position and you're risking getting hit for 20. That's not so good. But yeah. All makes sense.
A lot of the time, when you're at 1 HP and they're in a very advantaged position, there are options that you would never expect to be a hugely important mix-up option, but it's a 50-50 mix-up between that and the obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of often with Degray with the Ghost chip setup, that's a mix-up versus a reversal character. You can either Ghost and chip them out, or Ghost and bait a reversal. And that is a very specific reversal bait because you have to use the Ghost to do it. You have to make it look like you're going to do your air kicks. Mm-hmm. And then you don't. And then you deal with the reversal. Or maybe it's versus something versus Setsuki Ground C or something. Lots of characters have, again, in lots of matchups, will have options. They'll have a single option that complicates a checkmate situation enough to make it into just a hugely advantaged, really weird looking mix-up. Because normally a mix-up is you got some significant common option, some minor option that's stronger, so they defend against it more, making the weaker options much more powerful. Mm-hmm. Maybe some high risk, high reward options, stuff like that.
My favorite is the high risk, low reward option. That's the GC combo.
The ninja port.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's all these things that's the typical shape of a mix-up, of a high variance mix-up. That is, of a low variance mix-up. It's stuff like Degray's frame trap mix-ups. You do a jab into another jab. Most of the time. Most of the time you don't do anything interesting there. Sometimes you do something weird. That something weird encourages them to contest it, and just them doing that every so often will hugely increase the value of the really easy, simple, low-risk stuff you're doing all the time.
Yeah.
But they have to do that. That's the correct thing for them to do. It's just that it's the difference between a key option and a key threat. Mm-hmm. A key threat is something that, with its mere presence in the mix-up, hugely warps the options available. Whereas a key option is something that you use all the time. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter whether it's strong or not, whether it hugely changes the mix-up with its presence, just that the correct way to play is to use this thing all the time. Generally, that is a fairly safe option.
Your safe jump type thing, but
yeah. Well, less a safe jump because that's the drop the mix-up altogether option. Mm. But it's in the strike throw mix-up, you strike more often. Because a strike, you can't get Yomi counted. Mm-hmm. It doesn't loop. It's so there's lower potential explosive value out of it. But it's a bit higher damage in general. And if they're going to be Yomi countering your throws, better to hit them for it. You get lots of damage out of it, and it's low risk.
It's hard to we're getting into those theoretical zones where there's lots of exceptions, and it's hard to make rules that are right all the time. But
that's the general structure you get, and that's a very important thing to the neutral of Lum versus Rook. To bring it back to the relevant topic.
Yes.
Every moment in Lum versus Rook, believe it or not, is a mix-up. You believe it, I'm talking to the audience.
Yeah.
All the time, every time Rook jumps, that's a mix-up. Every time someone walks forward, that's them going, maybe the opponent will also walk forward and I'll be able to take advantage of it. Maybe they'll jump and I'll be able to take advantage of it. Every single time, it's much more mix-uppy than any other game
So
matchups neutral is.
it's
Every other matchup is generally doing stuff on reaction rather than creating mix-ups on reaction. All your decisions are to create a mix-up,
it's
not
possible,
to
yeah.
punish specifically.
It's interesting because I think a lot of matchups end up in this spot too. As you play them deeper and deeper, the way they work out is interesting. The jumping, walking forward, waiting back, they're all expressing some kind of decision that's trying to push the game towards some mix-up. But
Yeah,
I'm in
and
agreement.
generally
We need
you'll
to keep
yeah.
focus though on our.
Yeah, and generally you'll want to go for local missile options, but that's not an option in this matchup. If you go for something local missile, the opponent takes advantage of it. They gain their advantage state. Advantage states are explosive. It's a polarized matchup, like Valerie versus Arga, where if one person gains advantage, they keep advantage for a while, they win.
Mm-hmm.
They don't win 100% of the time, but they have huge favor.
So what I wanted to talk about now that we've gotten through talking about the general game plan.
To a very abstract level.
Yeah. We know what each character wants. We know Rook wants to get a knockdown, maybe force a block, but to get those pushed to the corner. We know Lum wants to build item advantage or corner Rook are both good results. And
Yeah, generally
specifically
some form of chip pressure that can be sustained.
Several item tosses help Lum do this by opening opportunities to get dice on the field, and dice are a very powerful tool for extending pressure, dealing chip directly, but letting Lum create situations where Rook's answers become very high committal and sometimes like an outright trade even on a good guess. So
yeah, sometimes there isn't even. In fact, the best ways to get dice out are to force Rook to not even have an option.
Mm-hmm.
Like with fireworks,
Exactly.
if you wait until the fireworks are coming down, right, Rook can't do anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
You get dice out.
That's what we're going to talk about, actually. I wanted to touch on some key interactions because we're going to get into specific replay review soon. So before we start looking at them directly, I'd like to just go over some of the key interactions to help everyone. Like, it'll keep our minds on track as we're watching these two, but for folks watching that aren't super familiar with the matchup, it's good to talk about some of the features of how moves and characters interact so that you know what to look out for too. So I think one of the first things that comes to mind for me when I'm thinking about the Rook Lum interactions is ground B, the panda roll, is a really strong anti-air versus Rook.
Oh yeah, really, really strong.
Yeah, so if
jump A at beat vines, those are the two things Rook wants to use to approach.
Exactly, yeah. If you're not familiar, it low profiles effectively, and most of Rook's stuff doesn't perform well against it. For jump A, the splash, the jump B, they both lose to it. And they lose to it pretty badly. Lum gets a knockdown and gets to set things up off of it. It also beats Head Crush, incidentally. Rook doesn't have a lot of incentive to do those predictively in this matchup, but it's nice to keep in mind. We'll probably see me do it for some strange reason at some point.
I probably forced you to do it at round start a few times just because it's really hard to react to what I'm doing at round start, and Head Crush beats one of my options there.
Head Crush is correct. There's a reaction thing. We'll talk about that whenever it comes up.
Oh yeah, I know it's on reaction, but it's hard to do on reaction.
Exactly, yeah.
I can't react to what you're doing by that time.
The really important thing though is roll is really strong. Like we were saying, it low profiles a bunch of Rook stuff, gets a knockdown, lets Lum. It really puts Lum's game plan on track because Lum gets to throw items at that point too. It loses really hard to Earthquake. It's rare to get a situation where ground B happened and it had anything positive against the Earthquake. Maybe it trades in like super rare situations, but most often Rook either gets a long knockdown from Shockwave, which lets strong OP pressure start right away, or it hits and deals damage and gives similar sort of safe jump options.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, basically, if you're imagining a giant rock landing on a panda that's just curled up, that's about what happens.
Yeah.
It's pretty realistic.
Yeah, you imagine a panda getting hit by a rock. You feel bad. Say, oh, those are endangered. It's about right.
I mean, the panda was trying to attack the rock, so it's justified.
Mm-hmm. The the next thing I wanted to bring up is Lum's cartwheel, his jump B.
Yes,
So
that's a very interesting one.
yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that for a lot of players who are figuring out the matchup, the cartwheel really dominates the field. Yeah, it's multi-hit. It does chip. It lets Lum do a neutral A into a B, which is a safe sort of ender as well. And so
Yeah, Rook isn't. He's not fast, so he can't then contest the minus frames after a blocked roll.
yeah.
It's not like Valerie, who gets an actual mix-up. The best he does is walk forward a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So the jump B can seem like oppressively strong, especially the things that you have to recognize is that Rook does have very strong answers, but the best ones are just locked behind meter is the thing. So whenever Rook has more than 1 HP, if Lum ever does a cartwheel in a neutral kind of situation, Rook can always react with his ground super. It's got infinite hits of armor, so the fact that cartwheel does several strikes or whatever, it doesn't matter. And
Also,
Rook,
if the cartwheel is far away, it can invuln just straight through the cartwheel hit. Because
yeah,
it'll only
it's
be
true.
one hit, it'll be the last hit. We actually saw that in one of the earlier replays, where I think it was Organis Islam
Yeah,
versus, it wasn't versus Darchi, so it was the other opponent we saw. And they just, they supered versus far cartwheel, and it just went straight through. Not a single hit happened.
yeah,
It was 1 HP Rook, so it was all grinding on that, and it worked.
yeah. So ground super is really strong. It's most flexible and easiest if Rook has some HP to work with. Lum taking 3 on that is really really hard to deal with, and Rook gets good mix-ups afterward. Another thing, if Rook's in the air, he's got jump super as well as a sort of reactive answer. It depends on him being in the air, not committed to something whenever the cartwheel's happening, so it's not always possible. It requires some setup. But even when Rook's at 1 HP, it's a tool he can use.
Yeah, it's also notably, if Rook's a bit more advantaged in the air, he can also vines. And that's something I see you use a lot, I think.
Yeah, so Rook...
Where I see lots of Rooks do that a lot, actually, where they also do that versus my Dragon, where it's just, okay, so I'm going for something that's an airborne way of attacking that is hard for Rook to contest on reaction. So they just do predictive vines because they're advantaged in the air. And not advantages in they're stronger. Advantages in they have plus frames.
Yeah.
And so it comes out first, and they win. They get knocked down. They probably win the round.
Yeah, so, and that's the thing, Rook can beat Cartwheel if he's doing stuff in the air early. Usually this involves a measure of just being predictive, which has its own risks, but that if Rook's willing to commit early and be aggressive, which isn't always easy, possible, or practical, he can beat it that way too. So that's the thing that I think when you're getting started with the matchup too, it feels very hard to be aggressive, so Lum can get even more value out of Cartwheel than they should otherwise. Even if you're using your supers properly, being able to pressure and prevent Cartwheel from happening in the first place is important too.
Yeah, like the amount you're seeing it, if it's that big a problem that it's like half the chip you take, at that point, do the predictive option.
Sure, yeah.
They are playing exploitably. Exploit it.
Last couple things I wanted to touch on were the Lum supers. We've already talked, I think, at good length about jump super being strong. So,
Okay, so ground super then.
yeah, for ground super, I want to say that its reversal properties, I think it's generally kind of known that it's a little sketchy, I guess. The invulnerability doesn't overlap.
It's valuable.
Invulnerability doesn't overlap with active frames is sort of the key problem. And in a lot of matchups that kind of makes you want to lean off of it a lot because they were going to do 1 damage to you either way or something. I think it's interesting.
Rook,
yeah,
it's
versus
a 2 damage looping thing.
Yeah.
If it fails, it fails. If you successfully do it, okay, you just got out and got 4 items out or got a trade. But that's still good. You're still out. You're back to neutral.
It's I think really solid for against Rook in a lot of cases because it beats meaty throw every time. If Rook's timing things correctly, right?
And it trades
And
with the sweep.
Yep, trades with sweep, and it also beats the Thunderclap clean. Thunderclap has 5 frames that are active, and the
And
the
there's
Jackpot
exactly
has 5 invuln
5
frames.
frames of invuln.
So as
Yeah.
long as Rook's doing things meaty properly, then Rook
Only
just gets directly
super
punished.
and ground C beat it, and Rook's not doing super meaty. Rook's saving that for cartwheel.
Yeah, Rook can. It's just one of those things that it's a pretty high opportunity cost. You're putting yourself in some risk afterward.
Yeah,
So,
and if you accidentally mistime it even slightly, if you do meaty, well,
yeah,
even
it's
slightly
very
meaty,
sad.
then it's just reactables now because the cinematic happens before they're vulnerable.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to bring up that's pretty interesting about Jackpot is that it is, I think, timing to safe jump Jackpot is actually the strictest in the game. Argagarg also has a 5 frame startup, but it doesn't punish in the exact same way. With Lums, you have to be recovered and be able to block after those 5 invulnerable frames are up if you want to be safe. So,
Whereas with Argagarg, you have to get through those 5 invulnerable flames and then recover during the startup of the bubble shield.
sort of, not
I'm
exactly,
guessing.
because Bubble Shield just has the 5 frames too. The thing about Bubble Shield is even if you do the latest one where you're like recovering after Bubble Shield's 5 frames are up, you're not punished directly. So it's
True.
like with Argagarg, you get punished directly if you have any active frames outside of those 5 startup. You really want to be early, similar to Lum, so you actually get some kind of leverage. Like you want to be +2
Yeah.
or whatever. Anyway, that's a different matchup for a different day. But
Yeah, Arg's bubble shield is weird. It's the situation where I'd say fuzzy guarding isn't just a thing you can do, a thing you should be doing.
yeah,
Well, not
it's
guarding, but fuzzy options.
yeah, very important. So, comment from
Yes.
Super mentioned Rook's
Oh,
ground super is the hardest safe jump in the game. As far as to execute, it's interesting. I
pretty
think
easy for Lum to save Melon though.
yeah. It has some trickiness to it, but if you keep working with it, I think it ends up actually being one of the more forgiving ones because Splash adjusts Rook's momentum. If you get really comfortable with how much it slows him down at different heights, you can pay attention to how much you delayed before you jumped in any situation and adjust your A timing to make your fall slow you down different amounts. So if you jump early, you A late. If you jump late, you A earlier to try and make it hit that ideal window. So it's tricky, but I found things like I was trying to do stuff with Satsuki and other characters. Like Satsuki's cape stuff is really difficult for me because I don't have a good feeling for when I need to do the initial jump, and there's no real adjusting after it happens if you did it at the wrong time. You don't get the kind of forgiveness that Rook does. It's interesting. Okay, so there's some other weirdness.
Other characters commit at one moment. Rook
Yeah.
gets 2 opportunities to commit to things.
Yeah, so you get to sort of adjust for your own play.
Yeah,
and
so there's
all that
some
good
amount
stuff.
of give.
There are
But yeah,
some
I
other
was going to
weirdness.
say,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say a thing about Jackpot. Another use for Jackpot is slightly delayed Jackpot. Because if Rook messes up a meaty, then something that can work really well is to do a delayed Jackpot. Because you defend against whatever option that would beat a meaty that isn't Jack, and you don't do Jackpot for that. And then you just press super. If you did actually defend against something, even if you messed up, even if you defended wrongly, even if Rook hit you, Jackpot doesn't come out. There is 0 impact from pressing super there. But if Rook did mis-execute even slightly, you've got a Jackpot out now.
Yeah. There's definitely room to work with it, and the fact that you sort of get to select a defensive option and then you Jackpot afterward as sort of all upside is maybe the idea. It's interesting. You want to.
It's not something I do because I am very bad at anything adjacent to fuzzy things. I can't do I can't do complicated input sequences. I press the buttons and go, and that's all.
Yeah.
Those are the two things I
Getting
can do. I can just press buttons and see what happens, or
yeah.
just flee. Those are my two modes.
Want to make sure there's absolutely no fake Yomis after a landslide. That's the first tricky input to focus on.
Yeah, I messed that up an embarrassingly large amount.
It happens every once in a while. So with when we're talking about Rook tools, real quick, just to cover some things. Rook's back A is useful for breaking mini-lums, melon, and dice in different ways. For mini-lums, Rook can't do it if they get too close, so I think that's not too crazy to keep in mind. The other thing is that when you clap a mini-lum, actually doing a cancel off of it is of questionable value. So in some cases, it is correct and fine to not cancel at all and just get the clap and move on. You've destroyed item advantage. Things like, especially canceling to Earthquake, is like throwing yourself off the balcony. Bad call.
Earthquake?
Sorry, I said Earthquake. Landslide. That's my intent. Canceling to Landslide is real questionable.
Like, there is a case where you cancel to landslide, and that's when Lum tosses the mini-lum. You see that he's tossed a mini-lum, react with a thunderclap, and Lum jumps at you in that time.
Even then, maybe. It really depends on what Lum's doing, and it's good to experiment around. I recommend trying it out, but it's good to recognize that there's lots of things that can give you hit stop. And as soon as, like, also things like melon, Lum lands really fast after the melon hitbox comes out, so often he can block even if you did the landslide while he was in the air starting melon. It's very rare that landslide really pays you off for the thing you want. Speaking of melons, Rook can clap those too, but he has to basically do it predictively in most cases. Maybe a high melon, you can react and do some sort of clap, but they have a really chunky hitbox, and Rook extends himself pretty far too. So similar to...
But, on the bright side, Lum is also predicting with melons. It's just a much safer prediction.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that usually isn't super crazy risk for Rook if you're picking a good time to try and predict it, but you don't want to try and react usually because you'll just get hit. Similar
Something
to
theoretical, I'd like to see maybe explored at some point is Earthquake to beat Melon. Earthquake can beat Dice.
Oh, so
the only difference with Melon is you don't get the cinematic to think about the timing for.
But
both of them have the varied height. I think they have the same vulnerable frames on the ground.
It's two.
Same landing frames.
Yeah. It's a hard one, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I think it's just as doable, just a harder reaction.
It definitely could be. It's one of those things that you have to predictively be in the air, I think, to be able to threaten it. So understanding when you can go for it is good, but a situation where you're in the air, Lum's doing melon, and you're not in a position to vines or something, I think is pretty limited. Like
actually,
if you were...
because I think going for opportunities for that would back jumps, and you don't want those.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about. Like, you want to try and take it if it comes up, for sure. But
yeah, so it's opportunistic, not something you create actively.
Right. Similar to mini lumps, cancels off of melon is of questionable value. You'd really think that maybe you get to like cancel to grab and catch Lum as they fall, and maybe that happens. We have some...
You do if Lum then immediately rolls.
Well, hopefully you catch him out of the recovery
out.
frames, but we'll see. Yeah.
I constantly roll into just... I go, okay, they're thunderclapping, so I can roll to punish... Oh yeah, there was a projectile there.
Versus Dice, Rook can also use back A. Different moves send them in different arcs. In general, you want to think about Rook using back A early, especially against something like jump A, which is pretty popular as a way for Lum to punt some dice into the air. So
yeah,
an early
I favor neutral
A is
A and back A, but lots of people do love their jump A's. Especially against Rook. Don't roll against Rook.
Yeah. Late Thunderclap will get you hit for a bunch, so it's not something that you want to lean in too heavily. You want to find opportunity, but again, something to work around. So other stuff.
And if you're just playing a casual game with someone, go for it. Learn that timing. Get that bit of practice in. If you lose that game as a result, who cares? You're playing for fun with someone. You're trying to do a cool thing.
We have some of those in our set. I know.
In my opinion, is to show off. And that showing off is what has got me the most far in learning this game, I think.
Yeah, you gotta
Like,
push the
something
limit.
people often comment on in tournament things, with, I'll say my Lum versus Onimar, that's the thing I show off most with, is I handle bots very well. Because what I do is I cartwheel and then I just push my luck more and more with rolls that, if things are even slightly wrong, will just go disastrously, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there is obviously ample opportunity for it to go completely wrong, but it doesn't. Because the way things often turn out in this and many games is you get a sense of, are things right or are they not right? And you get that instinct to just, you call it off if things are wrong.
Sure.
And you also, even beyond that, you get the opportunity to correct it if things are a bit wrong. Like if they do call the bots at a slightly different timing, you just cartwheel slightly differently and it still works. If they defend them with something and you have to wait, you still create the correct situation to give you the opportunity to do all these fun things. So it looks really unlikely, and it's on a knife's edge, but you are the one balancing the knife, and you are the one who sees the knife start to tip, and you don't follow through.
Right.
So, while there's all these ways it could go wrong, chances are it won't if you're practiced enough, and that practice comes from going for the unlikely constant. This also applies to Lum versus Rook. Loads of the time I will do things like I'll see a landslide and I'll see I've just tossed a coin, and so I'll just go for some wild option to try to land a second strike to break the armor, because that builds my intuition for what can break the armor there at what times. I won't know what does it, but I'll feel what does it, and I'll do that on instinct. Best one there I think is Melon. I couldn't say because I'm not actively doing it right now.
It can work. Hit stop just murders landslide. Poor move.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real quick to wrap up a couple things on Rook stuff before we get into our replay things. So I wanted to mention, we already talked about Rook supers help keep jump B in check. Always good to keep in mind. Rook's normal throw range is also very good. So it's worth remembering that you can catch roll Lum's GB on reaction at far ranges, and you can even use throws predictively at closer ranges to speculatively punish Lum's aggression. You can't always react. It depends on the spacing you're at, but it can be worthwhile if you have a sense for the opponent's style of play and how they go for things. Doing a whiffed throw isn't a huge opportunity cost for Rook at sort of close spacings, and if it sort of ends the item pressure situation from Lum, then it's a very worthwhile kind of guess.
Yeah, if you have that sense of if you become blessed by the game flow,
Yeah.
then that throw is just a sight to behold. And also, yeah, like you said, it's 20 odd frames recovery. So yeah, that's out of Rook's moveset. That's fine.
Yeah.
20 odd frames of recovery. Lum's not punishing it. Lum's not doing much in that time.
Yeah. It's very fun.
And you're not moving back, so it could be worse. You could be moving back.
And
there's something else I was going to say about that throw.
Yeah.
What was it? Oh yeah, also, if you do it and there's fireworks coming down, you'll just dodge the fireworks. Bomb. You dodge all sorts of things with that throw. And these are situations where Lum wants to roll. He wants to build the pressure with roll. So, you throwing there, even if it's on prediction, will just ruin things.
Yeah.
And also, just to build on something you said you can throw it on reaction from all ranges. You'd imagine that if it's close enough, you can't do that. But the trick is, if you're close enough, you've already thrown him. Because you're Rook. Lum is not that close.
It depends.
Lum is further back than that.
Actually, I think corner pressure, we'll look at an example later. I think corner pressure situations is a good example. The mid-range where like coin will hit Rook from an item toss,
Yeah.
that's at that kind of range where
Generally,
I think reacting to roll is definitely, it's sketchy at the least, and I think usually it's better to not expect yourself to be able to react to it. You've got
yeah,
3
generally I would
startup
say in corner
frames.
pressure, as Lum, I aim for block strings.
Right.
If I'm going to roll, I try to do it so there's nothing possibly, because
Yeah.
I do not want to lose that.
Yeah, but it, like something that you have to keep in mind for like Rook's side is definitely estimating like when you should be watching for a reaction and when you should be thinking about a prediction. It's just different spacings. So next thing is that we've talked about how Earthquake beats long range, like it beats item tosses when Rook's at long range, which honestly isn't very often. We'll talk maybe more about it later, but
It's all mid-screen.
a predictive Earthquake can beat long range item tosses without really exposing Rook to much risk at all. Which doesn't mean a lot in most situations, but it does mean that if you're at range, Rook doing empty jumps and just being in the air is a strong deterrent for Lum to throw random items out.
Yeah, that's terrifying for Lum. And I can verify I am physically scared. It's not just I go, okay, better be careful. No, I am scared because I'm at full screen. I'm happy to be at full screen, but I'm not able to do much with it because Rook is doing wild things now. I don't know what's going to happen. Well, the rest of the time, I know it's going to be one of these options. Yeah. At full screen, I don't know what's happening. There's no mix-ups there. There's just Rook doing things, and maybe it works out. Also, there, it's low risk, but there is opportunity cost. Because in general, if you move forward at full screen, Lum has 2 options: move backwards or don't. If he doesn't, you're no longer at full screen. Yay!
Yeah.
You're back to the mid-screen mix-up neutral stuff.
Yeah, and that's where you'll inhabit usually. It's like it's not the like super long range empty jumping forward stuff. It won't come up very often if Lum's doing their job. They want to also be close-ish to you, not in throw range.
Yeah, because that's where the chip pressure comes from.
But yeah, you want to.
It's less about advantage ranged because you both want that same. You both want that same range in neutral. Rook wants to get closer, but in the way neutral is shaped is he doesn't until he wins.
That's the idea, yeah. Because also good to keep in mind is Lum specifically wants things like Bomb or Thundercloud to lock down Rook's movement. As soon as Rook is stuck in pre-block or block stun, that's Lum's big opportunity to get dice, and we know dice is good and all that. So
Yeah, and to repeat something I said earlier, the specific range Lum wants to retain is such that Melon hits Rook's foot, the front foot. And the thing is, Melon does vary where it lands in height, but the maximum range is what I mean.
So just keep in mind that Lum wants the Melon to hit Rook's front foot, and Rook wants the Melon to hit his back foot. Just remember that easy.
And so the way it happens is though Rook is moving forwards, Lum is backwards to maintain that space.
Yeah.
And
Standard.
it's happening a bit at a time. From the full screen situation, Rook can be doing just empty jumps forward. Now Lum has a choice: item toss desperately, hope there's no earthquake. Stand still, but don't item toss. Maybe in order to do something on reaction, maybe roll to beat forward jump A or lines or something. Or predict or Melon to catch Rook as he lands, get that advantage, those advantage frames and begin that just pressure sequence.
Right.
Or Lum can move backwards. This is a terrifying option, but you have to do it sometimes because moving backwards that gets you cornered. But it also means
it lets you
that,
react.
Yeah, it means you aren't exploitable. Because otherwise, Rook's just moving forwards back into the neutral range. Because what you want as Lum is to stay at full screen as long as you can to build items. Maybe building dice as well. Because what that means is as soon as you get back to neutral, you're in huge advantage. Because actually, that's something interesting. Neutral is generally Neutral is generally treated as neither player's advantage, but I'd say it's both players are advantage, not neither.
I mean,
Because
there's...
the neutral here is the mid-screen situation. Neutral isn't full screen. Full screen's the thing that happens. Neither player's advantage at full screen, but it's unstable. It's not neutral. So
Yeah.
I'd consider it more no man's land neutral. That's no man's land is probably the wrong word, but it's not a thing that sticks around.
Yeah, there's the neutral is when somebody's not in a clear advantage state, right? So there are different kinds of neutral, but the one the game will center around is one where both players have things they threaten, either proactively or reactively. And
yeah, and both players have reason to maintain that situation.
Exactly. So the spacing where somebody has a reason to want to maintain it, that's where neutral will settle. Is when Grave wants to stand and be able to neutral a Rook's jump in. That's where neutral lives. It's not at full screen where Rook jumps over random clouds.
Yeah, and similarly in Lum versus Rook at full screen, Rook doesn't want to be. He's Rook, and Lum. Well, he'd like being at full screen, but he can't afford it. Can't afford to maintain it, so he doesn't want to maintain it. He likes to be there, but he doesn't want to make that position happen. Anyway, I see we're going into matchup analysis.
Wanted to grab it. Yeah, I figured.
I was done with the thing I was saying.
Yep. So, I guess actually it'd be worth checking. So I know you've looked at several of the different replays. Do you know which ones that did you start from the start of our series and work your way?
I started from the start, like the oldest one.
Okay, so this is the one we've got. I have notes on a very specific one that's like halfway through the set, so I'm happy to jump to that.
Okay, so that's probably later than my last set of notes. Mine go up to game 6.
Yeah,
Partway through game 6.
So
my first note here is a couple minutes in. To get there, that's when that are pre-written down. Okay, so that was a noteworthy round start thing. Round start is important in this matchup. You need to know what's going on there because both characters have relatively safe options that they need to use a lot, and that interact in very specific ways. You need to know how they interact. Otherwise, if you don't, the other player wins, you lose. Like that back A there, that is a...
Yeah.
Because Rook walking forwards is great for Rook if you don't use it. Because Rook walking forwards means he gets close, he doesn't get threatened by anything but back A. But so the thing about Lum back A is, it's safe. There is nothing that beats back A. All that happens is Lum loses around Rook does certain things, as in Rook's more advantaged from it. But Lum doesn't ever get hit. He doesn't ever get knocked down.
Yeah, like
back A recovers before Rook gets to do anything to actually punish it.
Right.
Even on prediction. The fastest Earthquake is after BA recovers.
Did you have a specific timestamp you wanted to jump to, by the way? We can...
my first thing is 155.
155. Ooh, that's way too far. We'll find it. Jupe has a comment. Maybe a general thing.
Oh.
If Rook lands a cross-up jump A, neutral A, jumps forward again, can the next jump A only land same side? So neutral A depends on the character. Lum is one where it hits same side every time, I think. I've got a list in my Oki guide. I paste in later.
That feels right to me.
Gotten a good... I'll let the game stick it out.
If it's jump A, I think it can cross up, can't it? But if it's jump A, neutral A, and then another jump.
So yeah, the neutral A knockdown. We're talking about the not neutral A knockdown. I assume not blocked.
I feel like Lum can make it cross up if he walks forward.
I think that might be true. It depends on how much Rook delays too. Rook can always make it happen same side on anybody if he wants it to.
Yeah.
All right, my fantasy strike is not happy with me trying to jump forward and then
backward. It's loading the game station. Mine's been struggling with it as well. I think right now it's just a bit slow to do that.
All right, perfect. We made it.
This is a perfectly common position here.
We'll jump back.
Okay, so the thing where mine really is an Earthquake versus Jackpot interaction at at around 155, a bit after. I think I wrote all mine slightly before the thing happens.
Excellent. We'll see what happens
So yeah.
He was
Anyway,
saying
so
it's jump A, neutral A. So yeah, that always hits same side on Lum in that situation. Just as a sort of
yeah.
clarification thing.
And there was a nice hit confirmed from Dr. Zeus. Jump A, it hits rooks at 3 or less health, forward A.
Yeah, always important to do. Let's jump forward a couple rounds. Your thing is at 130, you said? Or
155, but 130 is close enough.
Okay, it's going to be at the end of this round then, it looks like.
Yeah,
So,
it was a round ender, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So do you want to do
Okay,
any
see, that was Earthquake landing after back A. Then there was a cloud, and a committal option from Rook hit the cloud. Okay. Fireworks are out, so Lum gets all those cakes, and blocks that landslide, and thank heck, I actually threw it. There was some corner pressure, but I misspaced my melon. In corner pressure, you need to space everything very carefully from the Lums. Because you need to make sure that Rook can't win off a good call. He can get out, but he can't win, is what you need to make sure is true. There, my jump aid hit too high, so I couldn't follow up with anything, so I jumped back, because otherwise I might have got... it didn't work out. Neutral A into landslide is throwable from Rook.
Yeah, it's not a real option in any way.
Yeah.
All right, which thing did you want to see?
Okay, this is it. This happens here. You Earthquake this jackpot.
Oh, yeah.
But the jackpot started while you were getting up.
And I
you
get
were
hit
close.
by a coin. I remember this one too.
Yeah, which is very notable. There's a risk analysis to be done if you're earthquaking a jackpot. That's why I noted it down.
Yep.
You've got to judge spacing and timing.
It depends on which item the coin is too.
Yeah, coin is the most
late.
common item. But so an early coin, if you're a bit late on the earthquake, say the jackpot starts while you're knocked down. If you're in coin range, that means there's a good chance a coin's hitting you. So what you want to do really is jump away and then earthquake, I think. Because I think you'll still earthquake before the jackpot recovers. There'll still be items that make you sad, but you've got a knockdown and you didn't get murdered by a coin at 1 HP.
Yeah, it's something to look at. And something you can also kind of consider too is things like, in this situation, is it worth basically trying to high roll with Rook and hope that there isn't a coin that comes out at a timing that beats you, and that doing this early knockdown means that you get to jump into a pile of cherries.
Oh yeah, true. Also, another notable thing, there was a cloud this time, but in another situation where there wasn't a cloud, assuming Lum's still jackpot. I mean, generally the cloud is a part of a calculus in a jackpot. You see a cloud, then you go, okay, that's jackpot. I've got an item out again.
Yeah, so
and
coin and
I think the cloud was a part of the jackpot.
Yeah, the cloud was the.
Yeah. But yeah, normally you'll see a cloud and you go, okay, jackpot time. They can't contest it, and I can't item time.
Yeah, that one was a sort of opportunistic one with me at 1 life.
Yeah, and it being the perfect range with a bit of frame advantage. So the exact thing of a coin is likely, so you contest it, you don't contest it. Big item advantage. Chances are you're getting 1 HP's worth of chip.
Yeah. Did you have anything else in this replay you wanted to bring up?
In this replay, I've got 3 more things. Next thing's at 3 minutes.
3 minutes, you got it. Okay.
So just start here. Here. No, that was the thing I wanted to point out.
Okay, yeah.
Lum neutralate into roll to beat landslide, because notably Lum had frame advantage there. So it was if you were imagining that as Lum doing wake up landslide, that was a meaty neutralate. It was the same frame.
Yeah, same kind of idea, and I think it's a good lesson. Where was I?
Yeah, because normally Lum wants to do back A for the knockdown. Like there, I'll go for back A. But if you've got that bit of advantage, the knockdown is risky because you might get landslided. But a neutral A, okay, it wasn't quite meaty-like.
Yeah.
But a neutral A into a roll will beat the armor.
Yeah.
So suddenly the armor isn't a threat. You're up close, so that's a thing you're really worried about.
Yeah, I will mention that landslide is a totally fake option here for this reason, right? There's a clean answer to it.
Yeah, as long as Lum is acting this way, it's a fake option.
Well,
So
even
Lum needs to do this.
the situation where, because throw beats it as well.
Oh, true,
Beats
yeah.
media landslide, and if you jumped, you're going to be safe, like almost definitely. Like if you did some
Not if I
non-meaty
back
jump.
jump Melon.
If you
Not if I
back jump
back jump
Melon,
Melon,
the
but
hit
otherwise.
stop will protect you. And if
I don't think so. I get caught out of that all the time, I think.
Yeah. Oh, hey, we've
But I
got
think
Wow 2523, true to their name. Wow, someone's actually yeah, we've got a good community. Things have been a little
Yeah.
quiet lately. People some tournaments got called off, but good to have you here.
Yeah, that was just a couple of tournaments because two people have to be busy who are running the tournaments.
Yeah, community stuff.
Yeah, the tournaments have been really busy when they're running in their multiple weeks. So it's great. Unfortunately, it meant I lost some of my replays for this because they were too far back. I play in too many tournaments.
Yeah, you're winning too many tournaments. That's the key here.
Yeah.
So
it's great.
So yeah,
I should be losing, so I get to keep all my replays with you.
Exactly. See, that's what I'm saying. Now with
Or I could just favorite the replays, but that's cheating.
Yeah, not fair. Yeah, so I guess I wanted to say, in general, Rook landsliding as a reversal is pretty fake, and it's like definitely the case against Lum. So I wouldn't recommend
Against
it.
Lum when Lum has frame advantage, notably. If Lum doesn't have frame advantage, it's still pretty fake because blocking works.
Yeah,
but,
it has a long time before the first hitbox comes out. There's lots of things to worry about.
Yeah, I think generally if Lum doesn't have frame advantage, what you're doing is you're throwing or rather than landsliding.
Yeah, Jube mentions that Rook could have just supered here. Super is a legitimate option. Jumping, I think, is pretty fair. It doesn't beat the meaty stuff, but if Lum's backing off, then Vines is pretty free on anything Lum did. There's lots of options that are real. Landslide isn't one of them. If I had to, it might have been me going for it. It might have been me making a mistake. It might have been me pressing the wrong button on my controller, to be honest. I do not think there's any redeemable features of landslide here. This was a good answer to it for sure. Like, and a good example of why you shouldn't.
Yeah, this is neutral lane to be is a much more important thing to threaten versus Rook than versus other characters. If you end up in front of in that specific sort of advantage situation, then against any character without an armored move, you'd want to back it. It leaves you with plenty of pushback still. It has a bit more committing time, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Because you've got that bit of advantage. They're not going to do much with it.
Yep. So,
but here, you need that neutral lane to be at least some of the time, because otherwise, you die.
And the thing to keep in mind, too, is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20... There's like 20 frames of hit stop on this
so, yeah, you can react to that.
So, yeah.
You can react to that and hit confirm into a roll.
This applies to all sorts of armored reversals, too. Like, if you're playing against an Oni player, is a good example. You want to be able to confirm whenever they've done, like, if they're doing Divide and Conquer on Wake Up and you did some sort of safe jump type thing, you should throw them.
Yeah, so what I call this is an armor confirm.
Yeah.
Where you make sure that you know that was an armor thing. A hit confirm is a bit different. Often you want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
But an armor confirm is very specific. They are still doing their move.
Yeah, you want to make sure whatever option you're picking is appropriate to beat the armor or to avoid the attack if it's like a Dragon GC or whatever.
Yeah, like if Val does an armor confirm and lands, and Val's doing saves it, Val wants to throw.
Right.
Val doesn't want to do Cyan Magenta unless it would kill. Val wants to throw, and then utilize that for the extra damage of Oki, because Val Oki is really valuable. Valuable, indeed. So, anything else we want to talk about on this situation, or we want to in this particular situation, not really. Next thing's 3:35.
All right, we'll just play it out and let it get there.
Yeah, it's only half a minute. Okay, and we'll probably find something else just to talk about here. Like we went to full screen, it instant lapsed. I tossed a bomb. There was nothing I could do. I started moving forward to try to buy some screen space before.
So this was a very questionable earthquake there. That's for sure. It didn't do anything. It also let you get away with setting up dice. I get opportunity there, though.
But I ended up messing it up with that. I was going for dice. I should have left the dice there. Let you go for any earthquakes you might have wanted. and
Yeah.
instead go for safe pressure. Item tosses, melons. Those are the things I should have been going for.
Sure. Forward A ends up being when we're talking about what Earthquake's good for against after dice are on the field. Earthquake is actually really strong against forward A as an option whenever dice is around, because the angle it sends it at is so low. The hitbox of Earthquake fills this region below Rook. So even the ones that are at a slightly higher angle still get broken before they hurt Rook. And maybe
Lum back A is more threatening, but still has similar property.
Right.
But it's also much harder for Lum to do. It's a bit slower. You need to be a bit closer, and you have to move forwards and then hold back.
Yeah.
And that's that bit of execution that means Lum just will not instinctively do it.
Right.
And if Lum does, maybe he'll still forward A. And if he does back A and it works, the Earthquake might still work. There's a bit more give to it because maybe the dice will bounce high enough, maybe to be. But chances are things are going to work out in Rook's favor if Lum's trying to desperately go for dice when Rook is not at disadvantage.
Yep.
At that range, poking with dice, not a good idea in that context.
Yep. And I think this situation is a common one, so it's good for everyone to keep in mind. Whenever Rook gets an Earthquake, if he does landslide, and he gets to this kind of close spacing, if he does a Thunderclap, it's always meaty, which is a strong option. At this spacing, he also gets to threaten the other two options. Everything gets to be meaty if he wants it to be. So
yeah. So basically, Lum is very sad right now.
Yeah, it's a very, very good result for Rook, and that came off of an Earthquake at sort of middle screen, this kind of distance. It's definitely where Rook's happiest getting that kind of knockdown.
Also, notable thing, that forward A on the dice, it didn't bounce off the back. Because it was so low, it just stayed on the ground.
Exactly.
That's
so
really common with far forward A.
Yep.
Closer forward A, it gets more height. But far forward A, it's just kind of a pathetic push forwards.
Right.
Generally use that just to get a bit more distance on your forward A to maintain pressure and be more plus than you usually would be.
Little hand extender.
Basically, yeah. That's a thing dice really often act.
Okay.
So yeah, 335 for next thing.
335, we're almost there, yeah.
It'll be a back jump that Rook does. Okay, item toss, you landslided. I could have reacted to that, but I didn't. What I did was I back jumped. I went, oh god, I need to keep Rook out. I need to item toss.
Yeah.
That is a really easy mentality to fall into.
Did that just punish, actually?
It punished.
Okay, right. Just from that range, getting the item toss, yeah. And this is, I think, so the situations where Rook wants to do a landslide are pretty limited because a lot of items, like, for example, a coin probably hits Rook here and Lum gets to block as a result.
And gets that bit of hit stop.
Yeah.
And that's one-sided hit stop, so Lum gets to still recover. But I think it still often will hit in time.
Yeah, so it's something that you want to watch for as Rook, and it's something you want to be like worried about as Lum, is sometimes they can go for this kind of setup. And
and,
it definitely
and something we'll
applies
see
to...
later is a similar position. I back jump in that situation where I'm desperately escaping pressure, but instead of an item toss, what I do is a low cut. And that beats your landslide.
Right. Lots of things beat landslide. Like Melon's really good against it too at most spacings. Sometimes Rook gets
notably, that cartwheel also beats you doing thunderclap. I saw. So we'll see that when we get to it. If that was a thing I did do.
For sure, and like Jube says that you got to be comfortable doing nothing versus Rook a lot. Otherwise, it landslides your waterfish every time. It definitely applies to like ARG to lots of matchups. Rook wants to threaten.
Yeah, a lot of characters have key health counts. Rook has key spacings and advantage times. If there's a particular context that you end up at a particular spacing here, like here I back jumped and then I did something. I committed, and you after I back jumped, you landslide.
Yeah,
you had that time to do that and get the landslide active and start to land it. So what it was you were doing your forward jump A pressure, and then you did a throw while I jumped.
Yeah, I messed up my mix-up.
Yeah, but that is going to be a common thing in terms of that sort of timing.
Yeah.
It won't be that exact thing every time, but that setup of Rook's doing forward jump A things, Lum jumps out, Rook has pushed a button.
Yeah.
Rook landslides forwards, If that means if Rook even threatens landslide, Lum can't afford to item toss because landslide knocks down.
So it's interesting, and I'll make this as a quick side thing before we move on because we don't want to spend too much time on it probably. But Rook wants to use things like landslide that are really threatening high value predictions that get Rook punished if he's wrong. You want to use them sort of like close range fireballs in a way, where it's the kind of thing where not even close range fireballs. It's not a very good comparison. The point of landslide like this is more like a jump forward, I guess, where you do it on prediction, and you're anticipating them doing something that gets punished by it. And the goal with landslide is sometimes to get a hit, but more often the point of the landslide is to teach your opponent that they shouldn't feel comfortable throwing items or using projectiles. By using the landslide, you enforce that the game should play the way Rook wants it to play, which is they walk backward, you walk forward, you reach the corner.
And notably, this is not conditioning. Conditioning is a different thing. This is establishing the rules of the game.
I would say that it's like a sort of
It's saying this situation is sort of a mix-up. Here are the things I do in that mix-up sometimes. I won't tell you exactly how often, but the fact I do it at all is enough to stop you doing these things.
And I find that to be like the core of conditioning to me is
I see
establishing. I guess it's trying to teach your opponent some pattern of behavior you want them to respect or play around or respond to.
I've always seen conditioning as more of to use a game theory, donkey space thing. You say, here is a mistake I'm making. I dare you to exploit it.
Oh, interesting.
Because maybe I'm doing it intentionally. And against a machine, that's not worth it. Against a machine, the machine is happy about that. They get advantage. They can either just keep playing as normal, not exploit the mistake. They're still winning out overall if they're advantaged, or they can exploit it. But overall, that shifting thing, if you initiate the shifting thing of, here's a mistake I'm making, you exploit that, I exploit your exploitation, you exploit my exploitation of your exploitation. So if you're the one who starts that, generally in perfect play where they immediately recognize, that means that you are disfavored. But humans don't do that. Humans don't immediately recognize it. Humans don't exploit it perfect 100% of the time. Humans misjudge everything constantly. You're inviting them to enter more mind games than strategy games.
Sure. And well, the thing about landslide that's interesting and sort of the take on conditioning, I guess, is that I think that landslide from long ranges like this is a low value action in general. And I see it as occupying that kind of donkey space idea.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that you were roboting.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I think that landslide functions as a sort of donkey space idea, and especially at long range, because if you think about and for folks that aren't familiar, donkey space is a sort of a shorthand term to refer to picking options that are not ideal or that are exploitable, and trying to use them to get advantage over your opponent, either because they're going to do something that's exploitable, you're punishing some habit of theirs. Usually, donkey space is when you deviate from safe play, unexploitable play.
It's quote unquote misplay, but it's not actually misplay. It's misplay if your correct play is specifically unexploitable play where if they know exactly your strategy is, or exactly what strategy you're playing by, not exactly what button you're about to press. Even if they know exactly your strategy, they can't do anything about it. You already know how well it's going to do. Maybe it's going to be bad overall. You'll lose on average, but they can't do anything to change it. They can't do anything to do better. They can't do anything to do worse either.
The goal, I think, for conditioning, I guess, to wrap up my thoughts on it though, is that I want to use landslide in a way that makes it a low value proposition. Because when landslide is low value, the things that I want to do become strong, like walking forward, for instance. And my opponent becomes weak when they respect it, right? So I'm entering a space that is not profitable. Landslide has a huge amount of startup time, and if you think about the sort of spread, like all the different times Janet could choose to throw an item here. Janet could throw the item now, Janet walks back. Janet could walk back more and do something. Like, there's all sorts of situations where Landslide doesn't work out, and there's a very narrow range of spots where it does.
But the way my brain works, where a lot of is, okay, I have landed. Oh God, what do I do? I haven't yet reacted to the fact that that Rook is landsliding.
Yeah.
I item toss.
So, it's a thing that, like, if Rook can make the opponent feel unsafe doing item tosses or whatever at mid-range, then Rook's getting work done, even if Rook gets thrown for it sometimes or a lot of times.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's terrifying about this matchup, because so much of it is Rook threatening things like that to stop you pushing buttons. Rook's landslides and earthquakes and vines is all over the place in the matchup. Specifically, you think you can get away with that? Nope.
Yep. Top secret, that's every Rook matchup.
And so it feels so tense to play. It is emotionally exhausting if you play it too long.
Gotta tear them down. Any other moments you want to look at in this?
In this one, 425, there's some corner.
Okay.
Specifically, Lum corner pressure. Rook corner pressure is also interesting, but it's similar to mid screen pressure if it's OP.
420 is pretty far in. I'm gonna guess. Yeah, we get another round.
That's close enough.
Yep.
And we can see the whole thing leading up to it. So there we see the back jump thing. I go for a cartwheel. Weird one. You do that through the cloud. That was good for you. Okay, so here's just some general item pressure and stuff.
Oh, this makes me sad.
You do that, and
this
I
is
get
double sad.
Yeah, though. I get that, but then I also get out in a moment. We will see. Which is when the thing I want to talk about happens. So this is all set up for the interesting thing.
I do want to mention real quick that the idea here was that this clap beats the mini lum. The space that clap covers is actually quite large, but it does not reach. So there's some.
I think what happened was it dice instead.
It might have, yeah, because it does two. So clap can destroy 3 mini lums. It can break
one dice, but not 2. You'd think it would beat 2.
Yeah, it does. So the thing is that I think it's normal hit property breaking the die, and its projectile break doesn't affect them. Maybe it's a weird situation.
I think what's happened is it hit the die in a normal hit, and that overrode the projectile destruction.
Maybe, yeah. There are like weird properties. Rook can break 3 mini lums with 1 clap, even though he has like 2 projectile HP and 1 normal strike. It's strange. Anyway,
there's something happened here.
This is a situation though where
who knows what.
This is the correct spacing to clap landslide, because that should hit lum. The problem is that the mini lum creates this hit stop that protects lum, and you get the landing.
And then I get to block. And then I miss time my throw.
Unfortunate on the
But
throw,
here's the setup. I get Yomi counted, but there's a dice there. That dice is important. That will come up later.
Okay.
That happens.
Down to 1. I
and
give
then
up the
this
corner.
happens.
Get it back. See that?
And
why
then
would
that happens, but I get my back throw Oki, which I go for an item toss into a back A, which is a common Lum Oki here. And then I'm just doing a lot of very item-based pressure, using the fact I've got a dice there. I see you are not respecting the item pressure because I'm not melanin.
This is a good example
I use the dice.
Of a too late die or back A. If you do it predictably, you can break the die. This was far too late. Good.
Yeah, it's a big commitment.
It's pretty close though, as far as probably a couple frames off.
It was pretty close, yeah. And then that gets the knockdown. A dice is big because the counter hit knocks you down. And then that's the foot melon there.
And with three lums on the field, this jump is pretty desperate.
Condition.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, you couldn't afford to block them because that was chip out. You couldn't thunderclap, they were too close. Earthquake is your only option. And because it was game point, I went for dice to get that extra thing just in case Earthquake somehow works.
Yeah, so Earthquake can break mini lums. The jumping forward can be profitable for Rook if Lum jumps to do a melon or something. I can jump super to have a cinematic to get out of the way of the chip from the mini Lum. Stuff like that becomes possible.
So yeah, can we quickly go through that again? This time with an spacing.
Sure.
Because the spacing is the key thing here. This is what Lum corner pressure versus Rook is about. Well, there's other characters it differs, but versus Rook in particular, it's all about spacing. So
Okay,
yeah,
he gets
here's
the
where we
throw.
start. Okay, so I toss a cherry. But that's fine. I then do the back A, that's just a standard Oki versus Rook.
It
back throw,
creates the
item
space,
toss,
yeah.
back A. It's a Lum favored Oki. We've done analysis on it before. I can post the results in chat in Discord if you want. But yeah, I was at very close to chip out, but that's fine. I got
Right.
a coin. It looks lucky, but if you see, I'm also preparing to do, I'm also able to do an anti. In this case, I'm preparing to combo with the coin.
So in this case,
I have item confirmed.
I
I've
missed
seen
the
the coin. I've seen the situation.
I missed the reaction too to threaten some kind of
Oh.
vines.
I thought I'd item confirmed. No, I was jumping to start. Oh. No, I
Messy,
didn't
messy.
item confirm at all. I can item confirm there, but I didn't.
Yeah, same for me. But the knock, like the coin hitting me into the corner, is it's definitely a good result for
Yeah.
I'm getting space.
So yeah, here I'm stood far back. There is nothing Rook can do to me in time. I'm doing low committal options. I've got a mini lum out. You are not respecting the pressure because I'm doing weird pressure. I'm not.
Yeah, as a misestimation on when back A would work against dice here.
And then this happens. I get another knockdown. The knockdown isn't the thing that was happening here. What I was aiming for was whether or not the dice hit, it was plus frames for me.
Yeah.
In fact, it was about the same amount either way. It was either way, whether you were knocked down or not. This was just good because it got that extra damage. Perfect foot melon.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you stopped blocking at that exact moment. I'm guessing you were going for something else.
It
for
would
the
have been
moment.
correct to neutral jump an earthquake here, I think.
You're probably just that was probably jump start.
Coming into mind to do a jump. And then there's
I
a
guess
chain
another
of
mini lum. But honestly, without the mini lums, it was still win condition because you were on 1 HP. One mini lum is enough for chip out.
Yeah, I have super, and depending on how you're going for chip out, I have things I threaten. Is the sort of like Rook still has.
I think here I'd go for melon, then patience. Wait for the mini lum to be in active threatening range.
Yeah.
Where if you delay at all, the mini lum gets you, and
Yeah.
I can react to a thunderclap with the melon.
Rook wants to like neutral A to poke it.
Yeah,
I
the
think in this
notable thing here
situation,
is
when you
Rook
don't
has
have-
no armor, so a single mini lum is not you can't landslide through it.
Right. Rook wants to well, landslide's like a death sentence, even if I didn't.
I mean, yeah,
have
but you
health,
can't even catch me committing. I can commit.
Yeah.
The only
it's-
reason I want to not commit is so I can do block string pressure.
Thing too is like landslide. Even if I had a bunch of HP, the hit stop for multiple mini lums means that lum gets to do lots of stuff in the space.
Yeah, I was mostly talking about the hypothetical if there was
just one. Yeah. Makes sense.
But yeah, so that's everything I've got to talk about for this game.
Okay.
We've talked about the specific way the items work, the specific way the corner pressure was done, and the spacing of it,
Yeah.
and all of Rook's options at different points. Okay, game 2. My first thing is 5 seconds in, so that's fun.
Perfect.
This is a case of bad corner pressure in particular. How did I get corner pressure 5 seconds in?
I got counter
that's
hit by
how.
the jump forward A.
Okay, so that here is a case of, okay, see this cake?
Yeah.
I'm about to mess up because it's a cake.
Yes.
I don't react to the fact that it's a cake.
Yes.
I'm about to jump at you.
Sure.
I can't jump at you when there's a cake for that reason.
Yeah.
Jump A would work with a coin. You can't armor through a coin because jump A gets you.
Right.
But yeah, and then I'm dead because I messed up an item confirm and went from corner pressure to dead.
Yeah.
That's the power. That's why I'm scared of landslide. Next thing's a minute in, so in about 30 seconds time.
Okay. Is it going to be toward the end of this round?
Uh,
I guess I'll mention there's a nice example of breaking
Yeah.
A die with earthquake.
Yeah, I'm dying mid-flight.
That's
But then I take the advantage to cartwheel because you
Yep.
can't contest the cartwheel.
I could super here, I'm pretty sure.
True, yeah, you could have, but you didn't really have much time to think through.
Yeah. It's,
And Yeah, thinking about it, when there's dice, it's always a harder thing to react to because correctly positioned dice can save Lum during a cartwheel from.
Right, the hit stop
Because
can still protect Lum is the thing to watch out for.
Yeah, dice hits. There's as Lum lands, so the hit stop is exactly during Lum's landing frames. Lum holds jump, Lum gets out.
Yeah,
Lum has no reason not to hold jump there. In this case, the dice was way too early.
Yeah, and the thing that Rook can use to his advantage too is that the dice keep moving during hit stop too, because they're projectiles. So like if you do ground super and there's 4 hits of Lum's cartwheel on you, that's a lot of time for the dice to finish doing their thing.
And at that point, that's too early. So
right.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's correct to recognize situations where you can threaten your opponent because they don't know for sure, because they can't really know.
Yeah, because there's certain information you need to react really quickly to, and it's theoretically possible. You've got the time to react, but you don't have the mental capacity to, because people don't. There's a finite amount of attention you can pay.
It's not like a sure thing, so it's something to evaluate over the course of the match.
Yeah,
like
maybe they'll think I probably can and go for it.
Yeah, so it depends on like understanding your opponent's aversion to risk and all that.
Yeah, in this case, even then, I've got a dice, got a card, 2 damage, I've got a mini Lum on the way. Maybe the mini Lum will. I don't think it will too far away, but that's another thing you couldn't figure out in the moment. Oh yeah, that's a fun thing. Lum's ground super kills mini Lums if they're more than about a Lum distance away.
Because of the camera change.
Yeah, because when Rook does the ground super, he swings Lum overhead, and Lum physically moves there. That's counted. So the camera's center is halfway between them, on the other side now.
You get stuff like this with like Arg's goldfish call being warped whenever he does jump super, stuff like that.
I think that's a different thing. That's a cinematic camera shift. This is a camera center position.
I mean, it's all about where the camera's at, right? Because the goldfish comes from like center camera or whatever. The mini Lums die when they're far away enough from the camera.
Oh, true.
The same kind of thing.
So yeah, it's a different cause for the camera center shift.
Right.
In this case, it's not the cinematic itself; it's the fact that Lum moves. With the goldfish, usually it is the cinematic itself that changes things.
So what's the?
Okay, so the interesting thing here is going to be, you manage to get some corner pressure here, and then I do a thing when I get out.
Is that what time
it's
is that?
I do a late cut. This is going to be at a minute.
Okay.
So almost certainly the same round. Okay.
Questionable earthquake.
I'm guessing it's about to be happening here. You're about to get out. I'm about to mess up dice, say something or. Ah, I see what it was. Yeah. And then I get out. You go for an earthquake, which is a perfectly reasonable thing there, and you can see me doing cartwheel.
The cartwheel, yeah. When you're just at 1 HP as Rook, you can go for those kind of high committal earthquakes. You just want to recognize what risk you're committing to.
Yeah. So in this case, that is one of the cases of a cartwheel in a good space that I want to work on.
Yeah. So
that is a context where cartwheel is great.
Any 1 HP Rook kind of situation.
I jump back and I see you're jumping, and you're doing a neutral jump. I can cartwheel.
It's a forward.
Oh, it's a forward jump.
Yeah.
It was hard to tell in the weird frame steppy because it was about the same position,
right?
Because the camera was moving.
Yeah. And the thing that as Rook, if you want to like try and cover this, you finish jumping forward and then you probably jump back super and hope for the best, or you block out.
Yeah, Vines would not last long enough to beat it.
Yeah, pretty far away. So.
And so any form of just don't earthquake, land super.
Gotta
it's not spaced properly for ground super, so yeah, air super will work here.
Well, and air super, ground super has very, very, very limited situations where it works.
Where it works at 1 HP,
yeah, when you're at 1 HP. So.
Okay, so that was the thing I wanted to point out. That's a good cartwheel. That's a context where cartwheel is great.
Yeah.
That's something that people don't do yet. That's one of the ways the matchup can grow.
Sure. And like 1 HP Rook, you definitely want to exploit it. Those kind of situations. And like even if in situations like these where it punishes an earthquake, you even get like usually a 3 damage, at least 2 damage kind of result off of it too. So it's quite powerful even at other HPs if you manage to use it as a hard prediction. You got any other notes from this replay?
From next one is in 3 seconds time, and that's the last one.
Okay.
So next one is round start. This is specifically a bit of,
hold on, I'm losing
but it's specifically it's doing this into a cartwheel again.
Doing okay.
So you know, back A round start, I do that. I jump back. I do a cartwheel. You didn't push a button, so you didn't win. You had no reason to push a button.
So this
you
is
were doing
something
low
that
committal.
Rook wants to do. This was me doing Earthquake, which is pretty questionable, I think. But
you're pushing a button that late. Nothing would have worked at that point at that lateness. You had to. I don't think you could have reacted to the cartwheel.
I don't think I could have reacted to the cartwheel. This is why sometimes when you're Rook and you're jumping around, you go for things like an early jump forward A or forward jump A to
because it's not too high committal.
Cover the possibility. It gives Lum room to react pretty early with Lum roll or something like that. Other thing that Rook can do though, if you're wanting to do empty jumps to threaten lower, you want to be very, very, very prepared to do your jump super. And that's something that I think across the set I wasn't dialed in on everything, but you don't get
S
a
super
huge
here
queue,
is strong. Only thing I can do to beat it and not block it, which leaves you plus, is roll. And that means I have to leave myself free to roll because I'm not rolling prediction because look, you're earthquaking.
Yeah.
Roll is extremely high risk on prediction there when you're in that position of the anti-air.
That's
of
what
the jump rather.
Yeah, and so that like this kind of situation, Rook has over 20 frames to react to from like the kind of like clear the trampoline appearing beneath Lum. So that's not saying that you shouldn't ever do like Earthquake at this position because you want to pick options that'll threaten the things and force your opponent to play in a way that's favorable for you. But if you're going to do a sort of late committal, it's very important to be ready on the super, that's for sure.
Yeah, so this is a mix-up situation. I think this is you've jumped forwards and I've jumped back after the first jump back.
Yeah.
That I did. So I think what the mix-up is I jump back again or do nothing. I might also be able to cut to jackpot.
You could do an item toss if you wanted to. Like that's what the
I am not
Earthquake is.
item tossing there.
It could happen. It could happen.
If you push a single button,
there's upside for coin and for many elements. It's not super crazy compared to like round start spacing. You're a little further back, which is advantageous.
Yeah. But I am not comfortable with the risk.
That's fair. That's fair. I'll trust your
judgment. If it works
judgment.
out, that's okay. If it doesn't, I lose the round. So yeah. Also, if you go back to before jump to the back. So right to back to round start.
Yeah.
A thing that we need to lab out at some point after that back eight is me doing jackpot. So if we just frame step through and see what the spacing is.
So yeah,
I could micro
you can definitely do walk forward jackpot. Now, if I do an early earthquake, I think jackpot loses every time. Like if I just do it
looks
immediate.
like it might, but I might be able to. Oh yeah, early earthquake.
Because I get a lot of time while you're
early
recovering.
Earthquake is reactable. Early earthquake happens during the back A's recovery.
Yeah, so the thing that you want to watch out for is how committed are you mentally to doing a walk forward jackpot, because getting yourself to...
Yeah, if I catch myself out, if I trip myself up, that's bad.
Yeah, that's the thing to watch out for. But yeah, so jackpot's a very strong anti-air, that's for sure.
Yeah, like there's another situation we worked out a while back. Back end. All of Rook's option, Rook can jump that back A. It's not meat.
Yep.
But unfortunately for Rook, every option he has after that jump, not great.
It's not great
it's a mix-up.
If Lum's got the super, yeah, that's for sure.
It's explosive, but so there's it's possible if Lum doesn't have meat for Rook to win the mix. But overall, Lum will win it more and more powerfully.
Yeah, the Rook's big upside on any of those mix-ups is that if he gets a knockdown, it has those round-winning chances, same as the other Rook knockdowns. But it's it's difficult to commit to, and you don't want to, like with all the things, committing to stuff after it isn't so bad whenever there aren't items on the field. But if you know that Lum's ready to use super to anti-air, you gotta be aware of the danger.
Jackpot is a deceptively strong anti-air. You don't think of it as an anti-air often. But oh, it works well because it comes out so early.
Yeah.
It comes out after like 5 frames. And it comes out with a very lenient hitbox. It's not like Neutral A where there's a very particular spacing you need, so generally you'll do it based on rather than any reaction.
Right.
Like, I'll use Neutral A as an anti-air if I expect them to jump out of a bomb. I will use Jackpot as an anti-air because I've seen them jump. So they both have similar startup, but Jackpot is extremely different.
Covers a lot of space. It knocks down.
If Jackpot is spaced properly, and Rook doesn't have time to get out an earthquake already, it isn't already active. Jackpot just wins.
Yeah,
I think the only thing Rook can do is air super, and even that's not going to work because he's too high. It runs out of invuln first, gets knocked back, I assume. We haven't tested it. We should do that at some point. But yeah, that's everything I've got for this round. So we could watch a little more if you want, but
I think we'll move on. We're running pretty long, and I know I've got a bunch of notes on a later one too. So
yeah. Okay, so game 3, I've got a round start thing.
Okay.
I think it's pretty similar to that last round start stat, except I don't do a second jump back. I just do jump back straight into cartwheel, and it works as a call out. So did you have anything you could have done on?
Huh? Oh, I didn't do things first possible frame. Like, we'll see it probably in the game that I've got picked out for replay later. Is I do a lot of I'm like a pogo Rook. I'm jumping constantly and doing jump forward A. In this case, it's another earthquake. Kind of like a predictive thing, expecting that you're going to land, try and throw an item, and like at round start spacing.
Yeah, because I often will.
Getting a coin or something like
that's a real thing Lum
does. Is like crazy high value. There's no good answer for Rook. And then other things are still pretty valuable in a lot of cases.
And noteworthy thing, because it was a counter hit, I could combo into roll. I think that's what it was. Normally, I can't combo into rolls off Jackpot. That sort of spacing.
It might also be okay. Could it be a height thing too? Maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's what it was. Normally it's too far, so you've landed before my roll reaches. In this case, you were bouncing more because of the counter hit.
Okay.
I'm not certain, this is just a hypothesis, but that's what it looks like based on what I'd expect normally.
Yep.
Okay, next thing is 30 seconds in. Which is just, you're blocking a bomb, I get dice out. Pressure, and it's
that's an unusual situation, by the way. I wanted to mention that this landslide was done predictively. The melon was done high.
And then I meant them to try to dodge it.
And the Rook can sometimes get under it. Rook's, it seems odd because he sort of lifts himself up in the air, but Rook actually gets smaller during a landslide. He's not as tall as he normally is. It lets him go under things like Jaina's jump B, stuff like that.
Yeah, that fist of his is really close to the camera. He's not just mad.
And so,
and he
in this case, get under it.
And then, because of the lack of hit stop, you actually recovered in time to throw me out of any button I could have done. All I could do there was Yomi. I'm not sure even certain I could Yomi.
Yeah.
I probably could Yomi, but maybe not.
Yep. This is just...
But yeah, soon we will be seeing a bomb.
Okay.
This round.
Yep.
And then when that bomb happens, note the way that dice gets utilized.
Yep, no jump super. Poor Rook.
There's the bomb. I do a meaty poke, which forces you to just take the bomb. Unfortunately, you get hit by the second hit of it.
Yeah.
That to happen. 6. And then I spend all of the dice really quickly. Mess up.
Yeah, I didn't get my.
The corner pressure before that is important. And that was just a mistake. That was
yeah, there are a couple things in there that could have gone a lot more smoothly.
Was that 45 seconds? Yeah. Go back a moment again. Because there was also a cartwheel I noticed that was in. Because this is about key health counts. Okay, so you do that.
Yeah.
So play.
Yep.
So you've knocked me down. You landslide. but you weren't able to do anything meaty. I jumped back, you earthquaked, expecting me to item toss. I did another cartwheel.
Yeah.
I'd started doing item toss.
Yeah.
Not this game, but this set. This was a new thing. You weren't familiar with it yet. You're doing more earthquakes than you might otherwise. I did a cartwheel. You were at 3 HP, so it was a round win cartwheel.
Yeah.
Normally, what that might be is we're back in the corner, back to scramble situation cartwheel. Really, if you weren't at 3 HP, the better thing to do would be melon. Melon does 1 damage, leaves me
It
very
doesn't
plus.
expose you to risk on things like if I empty jump and ground super or something like that.
Yeah. Because the thing is, even 3 damage from a cartwheel, it leaves me close to you. It leaves me close to you and minus.
Yeah.
It's not terrible, but it's not great.
Yeah.
And that spacing, if I have the opportunity to set up a pressure sequence, more valuable than even 3 damage, unless that 3 damage will kill.
Sure. And for a fun thing for Rook to look at too, after you get this vines, don't forget you can walk forward a little bit and get the meaty landslide, and that's much cooler. I think in this situation you actually probably get a, I don't know, maybe you don't get a throw punish. Whenever a landslide whiffs like this, it's always very sketchy because Rook has a lot of recovery time.
Ah.
But
yeah, and then that was actually a sort of scrambly mix-up there because
Yeah.
I don't think I was expecting meaty.
Yeah.
That was what I was expecting. Anyway, my next thing is at 2 minutes.
Okay.
I misuse dice, and then I try to do corner pressure, and then I get head for my trouble. That was fun. Okay, see, I get dice out at the wrong time. You just
Yeah, I miss my earthquake on it though.
actually, I think that was a different set of dice. Because mine starts a bit after 2 minutes.
Oh, a bit
So,
after
yeah.
2. Oh, right. Next dice.
Okay,
Here we
here's
go.
dice. You're thunderclapping.
Questionable.
You aren't really
thunderclap.
committing to anything, so I do that. But this isn't. That was luck that things went well at all.
So this,
That could have just as easily gone terribly because I did not have an advantage.
yeah.
That cloud was way too close to me.
This, by the way, this jump in earthquake was specifically me again testing stuff. I saw earthquake having Organist did neat stuff with earthquake breaking dice. So across the set, I do it several times.
Yeah, in this case, it was I jump aid the dice.
Yeah, jump
and
aid
it-
doesn't. Yeah, you
So
don't
if-
get enough height.
If you watch the angle of the dice here, if you frame that through, you will see that as it arcs through, it specifically hit that edge.
It hurt it
of
at a
Rook.
startup. Yeah.
So if it had been later, it would still have been ever so slightly too high for
Yeah.
the earthquake.
Yeah,
But
it's
only slightly. Slightly lower, it wouldn't have been. So there are some jump A's, I believe, that wouldn't have worked there.
yeah.
Like you could have earthquaked the dice. Earthquake the dice?
Definitely.
Earthquake the dice. Words are hard.
Yeah, I think that it might work. The thing that I've kind of evaluated is I think that jump A I'd rather go for the thunderclap and sort of accept my block if I miss it. Forward A,
Yeah.
back A, there's more potential I think for earthquake shenanigans to protect me, or sometimes maybe
Something
jump
that-
back, jump B, using the vines to break them too in flight.
Yeah. Oh, something that would have worked here. Landslide.
No,
No,
why?
genuinely. If you watch what I'm doing,
Yeah, you jump.
I do the jump A, and then I item toss.
So the danger here is that if I like do it
Oh, no,
right
never
here,
mind,
there's a
landslide won't
cloud with hit stop.
Yeah.
And if you
The
do
cloud strikes just before it happens. But I think actually it wouldn't work. I was waiting to react.
yeah, and I'd be scared of things too. Like if I do a landslide and you do a jump A, then I take one and then I get thrown and then you've got Oki with dice. It's like a
Yeah.
very, very, very high risk proposition, even if I don't get hit by the cloud. Which
Yeah, and the
depends on
reward
how
is-
early I went, but I could see
Compared to just blocking, it's win condition like for Lum, but you're at 5 HP. You could survive it.
yeah,
You could survive blocking for a bit and going for a better opportunity.
there's no need to push it. There's no other items on the field. Yeah, like committing
Yeah,
to
and
crazy risk.
I am resisting utilizing the dice for a bit, so and then I use them all at once.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I believe I'm correct to use them all at once here, because otherwise you could have cleared out that middle up. I was not in proper pressure, but there I misspaced that melon. I wasn't going for the foot melon, and so normally that head crush is still a threat, but I got cinematicked, and then that was a win for you.
Yeah. That's the thing that watches out for. And I think this another weird situation was the anti-air roll in the corner here ended up being throw punishable. I think you didn't end up far away enough.
Yeah, it wasn't an anti-air. That was the thing. You landed first.
I see. Yeah, so I didn't get knocked down, right? It hit me during my couple of frames of recovery.
Yeah, and it wasn't a crossover roll, but it was a corner roll. It was all out of the corner.
Yeah.
So the exact property applies where I move back a fixed amount.
But
the corner was in the
yeah.
Normally I move back a fixed amount, but that fixed amount now has to go across you.
Right.
That's what happens with the cross-up roll, and so that fixed amount is just within throw range.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, next game at 150. Which is just an interesting option to poke, and then at 205 is another where I do something that is a bad cartwheel. So that can be noted as an example.
When's the first one?
150.
Okay.
You will earthquake and it will whiff, and I will do a poke afterwards to catch you out of a button, which is of interest. Okay, so here's the earthquake. Wait. What? Here's the earthquake.
Hey.
And then I catch you out of thunderclap with a poke. So that was me specifically. I didn't go for an item. You were calling out an item or a cartwheel or a melon also.
So this actually isn't a good time to even do an earthquake. If you notice, there's a cake on the field. This earthquake is pretty unmotivated.
So I couldn't item toss.
And it's something that Rook wants to watch out for too. Is if you're going to try and predict an earthquake, you have to have a good understanding of what is motivating Lum to be on the ground. And while there's a cake here, there's not much.
Yeah.
Right? So in this situation, I do a thunderclap for mysterious
which makes
reasons.
sense as a decision. I mean, honestly, it wasn't reacting to my walk forward. It was reacting to the threat of me doing a melon or
predictive
something
kind of
slow.
Thing. Yeah.
You were expecting me to go, okay, this is safe for a bit. I get to do something. Maybe I would have walked forward for not melon, cake. Mm-hmm. There were things I could do that would lose to thunderclap. I went for a poke. It was It was a mix-up situation.
Mm-hmm.
It was one that I didn't know about until I watched through it in this replay. But it was a mix-up situation.
Well, it's like there's lots of spots of predictive action trying to catch something, and the tricky thing to evaluate in the moment or even afterwards what the chances were.
With most characters, a predictive poke isn't really a mix-up. It's just a thing you do sometimes. Because there's a chance that they'll jump it, but that chance is low enough that I consider that less.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about more at some point in the future. It's a really interesting topic, that's for sure, but will certainly eat up a bunch of time.
Yeah, whereas with Rook, you had a few options, including that would have worked against the things against some of the things Thunderclap would have worked to get the cake. And that would have beaten the poke. So yeah, there were options there that were real and would have beaten the poke. Therefore, I would consider it a mix-up. Because it was also at a fixed point in time. It had a start point. Anyway, my next thing is a 205. So just play.
Yep.
I'll do a bad cartwheel.
Oh, no. Well, no, so this is a good cartwhile.
That wasn't 205.
Oh, in the next round. Okay. I was at 1 HP. I just burned my super. I think just about any cartwheel's got to be good while I've no super, right?
See, that was the whiff thunderclap I mentioned a while back.
This was me messing up Oki, yeah.
Yeah, and I cartwheel because I think, okay, maybe this is a chance because I'm experimenting with cartwheel this. But obviously, thunderclap has much less recovery than I realized.
Yeah, it's only 15 frames. It's very, very quick.
So, yeah, I don't see whiff thunderclap very often.
It's just a mistake, honestly. You throw punish me here, for sure. If
yeah, I could have done something else, but what I did was, okay, quick thinking, let's cartwheel. Cartwheel's good. You don't have meter.
Yep.
And you do have frame advantage if I'd spend all that time jumping back.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing where I do this. This is the kind of predictive thing. Plenty of times I get counter hit out of the startup of Earthquake or something, or I delay my option and I just get hit out of nothing in the air. This jump was very specifically meant to catch jump back melon, but also covers things like jump back
What I'm doing here.
cartwheel here. Yep.
And in fact, if I jump back an item toss, that would also still lose to vines.
It's possible. Like if you just jump
I mean,
back
even
and
a
back
coin
up,
would just trade.
yeah, jumping back, you get like a throw punish if you're blocking. So it's
Yeah,
not like
blocking
an
is
airtight option.
blocking or jump back roll are my two options. I am not brave enough for jump back roll or jump back because every instinct I have is, oh no, earthquake. Because that is just the pain of earthquake is too great.
Right.
Okay, that is my last thing this game.
Okay.
My next thing is 115 next game. This is noteworthy because it was a precious where the items hardly matter. And the reason the items hardly matter is where it's because I had a dice out.
Was it 150? Was it here close to the
150.
start? 150. Okay. Cool.
Okay, here. Oh, it was 115. Oh no. I looked at the wrong thing. I looked at last game and saw the first thing was 150. I'm sorry.
Is it back at 115?
Yep.
Okay.
Time for... Oh, it loaded quickly. Nice.
Yep. As long as I use the round navigation, it seems to be fine.
Okay, so I do that. It's a low one because you were standing back and thunderclapping. It was predictive. I predicted that. Ultimately, I don't think it was the best, but I didn't know that at the time. That was later in
Yeah.
day.
So whenever I'm going for the clap here, there's some knowledge or like idea that if you do something with dice or super, that I've got to cancel to landslide
Yeah.
ready to go. Although in this situation,
And this creates a scramble.
you
But,
get to block if...
and then I
like,
go for that.
Yeah, and this one ends up losing.
Yeah, if I blocked it, it would have been fine. But you also don't have to landslide. So ultimately, it's a scramble that is not Lum favoured enough to justify spending meter, and most importantly, spending all that distance.
Right.
Because at that point, I have frame advantage. I am at full screen. I could do whatever I wanted. I chose to dice. I didn't have to dice. I could have item tossed. I could have meloned.
Right.
I could have cartwheeled. I didn't want to cartwheel because you have meter. Could have. I had all these options, and dice is not the strongest.
Yep.
But yeah, okay. So from here, we're going to see that you destroy two of the. The third one is behind you. I get to start up a pressure sequence. Okay, you do that. I roll, it hits. I do another one. So I'm using rolls as posts. I'm using that melon. I'm using that one coin. But my other item tosses do not stop this. The pressure sequence is over now. But in that pressure sequence, it was long enough for me to get meter again.
That was a very bad thunderclap for me.
But yeah, so ultimately that was a demonstration. Lum's pressure strings do not depend on good item tosses. Only one of those even affected the string at all.
Yeah, the critical thing is having dice out. Like if you have dice out,
Yeah,
then
because
it...
dice mean you can't afford the vines.
Right.
And that vines is the thing that stops you using melon. So what I end up doing is a lot of spaced melon.
You can play it
And
back.
that lot of melon means lots of item tosses. I get to do the item tosses
Yeah.
are controlling your actions at all. One of them is a blocked coin. That's good, but not huge. A hit coin is huge. A blocked coin is some frame advantage. It's like a melon.
Yep.
But yeah, next thing is a 205.
205.
No, this one's also 205.
Okay. Well, we'll be there very shortly.
Yeah, this is another dice one. Another situation where there is only one dice left. So we're doing stuff,
Yeah.
and I
questionable
use it as...
thunderclap.
Was that 205?
Yeah. Here's the 205.
Okay, here's the 205.
Okay. So this one.
Okay. So here you destroy two
breaks
of them.
2.
That was the first hit breaking one. Here's the second hit breaking a second one. I presumably block it. Yep.
Yep.
One dice remains.
I wonder if that's
And
actually meaty.
what I'm going to do is use it as a poke.
Also,
I wasn't brave enough to go for...
yeah,
okay.
throw. Hey, there's Zito.
I've been having bad times with throws after landing into a landslide.
Yep. Good to see you. Okay, so here.
But yeah.
Yeah.
And then that thunderclap. Wait, the thunderclap didn't destroy the dice.
No, it was like on my body.
Ah, okay.
I
So
guess
the dice was too far back.
Yeah. Oh,
Then immediately after landslide, it pulls me in.
wait.
I poke.
No, hold on. Look at this. This is very strange looking. I do the back A. You see a dice break?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, no, that happened.
Oh,
Okay.
I didn't see this properly when I noted it down.
I don't know what happened there. 'Cause
I thought what happened was I poked you with the dice, but what happened was the thunderclap brought me in. So I thought it was a range extension from a dice, but it was a range extension from a
the
thunderclap.
yeah.
So I thought it was a good example of dice as poke. Hey, Azito. But it was actually a good example of a poke to beat thunderclap.
Yeah,
Or to punish thunderclap.
in that situation, it's pretty legitimate for Rook to do like a neutral A or something.
Yeah.
And there's a mist confirmed to end the round, and yeah,
But
makes
these
Rook
things
sad.
happen. And then I get all this opportunity. That's what you get from this confirmed. If Rook's cornered, Lum gets to do all these things. Unfortunately, I neutral jumped. If I back jumped, that would have been great.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like in this position, if I'm close enough that I get a thunderclap whenever you're still falling from the dice, then I can do a landslide and threaten you, or I can do nothing and just get some advantage. So I think that's a situation where yeah, being that close when the dice comes out is a benefit for Rook.
Ultimately, what I need to do is I need to not overestimate the power of the cloud. Because my instinct is the cloud will stop you. The cloud will not necessarily stop you.
Right.
Okay, my next thing is next game 115 with an N.
Gotcha.
Because, of course, we have to constantly alternate between them.
Round 1.
Wait, no! I'm sorry! I keep miscounting. I thought the last one was game 4, it was game 5, we were already on game 4.
Okay, so should I go back to...
Okay, so we just watched 205 last game.
Yes.
220.
Okay.
Bad Dice White, we already talked about that.
Okay.
245.
245. We'll get back there.
I am sorry for my constant doing.
Round 5.
Okay, we're about to see it.
Okay.
So, we're going to see a mini Rook. And I'm going to make a dreadful mistake with you're going to marvelously. Okay, so mini Rook at 3 HP. At 2 HP. I'm getting lots of damage off it, but that's not the point. 1 HP. I think I'm safe to contest the landslide. I'm not. You didn't get hit by the mini Rook. You hit the mini Rook.
Okay, let me
The
see
mini
if I
Rook
can
was
jump
1
back.
HP, so the mini Rook died. What my misjudgment there was the amount of health it had. I acted like it had 2 or more health. It didn't.
Yeah, that's a very interesting situation because I guess the back A hit it first to get it down to 1. I haven't had much success with the landslide actually hitting mini lums, but this one just worked out, I guess. I'd be curious to see the...
I think it's the tip of the knee hitting it.
Something like that,
I
yeah.
think that's the space thing.
It's very unusual. No, hold on. Do I take damage here? So I take damage from the mini lum, I think, or the mini rook.
Oh.
So I just get hit by it, but it doesn't
Okay,
matter
so my
because
misjudgment was thinking I could contest the landslide with dice then.
yeah, the
I think what I need to
stop.
do is I need to stop using back A to contest landslide. I need to use roll or neutral A. Probably neutral A, it comes out faster.
The startup
That's
and the way it extends
what, 6
you
frame
forward.
startup? Mm-hmm. So yeah, neutral A, the dice is not going up, not hit the landslide
Yeah.
in that time. So the dice is hitting you. Maybe the neutral A is also hitting you. So even that might be sufficient. Then there's also a mini rook there. So pretty good overall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my next thing is 255. A bear cartwheel. I don't know how to pronounce it.
No, it's okay. I don't even use it. I say scramble.
That was it.
Yeah. So this is a spot, like, I'm not at 1 HP, but if you're at 1 HP and you're wanting to get out of the danger of a cartwheel, like, being open, being able to react to it, and getting it in time, that's important.
Actually, I have a feeling that might have been a misinput.
The
Maybe I was
cartwheel?
trying to roll.
Very possible. Like, trying to get it right when you landed, kind of deal.
Yeah. because you want all the time you can get. Next thing is at 3:30. In a scramble, I use dice badly. Don't use it versus Thunderclap is the thing I noted down. We will see exactly the context of what it is. So here I'm utilizing the fireworks to get some chip out of.
Oh yeah. So this is a
okay,
common
here.
situation when there's a
Yeah,
mini lump
you're
out
close. You're thunderclapping a mini lump. I'm going. Okay, he's gonna thunderclap. That means he's doing something. I can dice.
there. Yeah.
Not thinking about the fact you can cancel.
Yeah. That whenever I think this is something that I've gotten in a habit of too, is trying to use the mini lump as a tool to threaten you. As long as you're not working to punish my thunderclap stuff, then I directly get some kind of threat off of it. In this case, though, I think I get thrown, so it's not so good
Yeah,
for
I get
Rook
to
on the whole.
block.
And I'm holding on to heavy chip, which is also not so good.
Yeah, but it was a big risk, and then the
With
pain.
the throw, yeah, it stinks.
The pain. Final thing at 4:05.
405, you said?
Yeah, this one is just an example of a good item confirm, followed by me failing to capitalize on it. But the item confirms the important thing, and the fact that it's possible to capitalize on it.
It didn't like that. I tried to go frame step backward after jumping to a new round.
Yeah, don't frame step backwards after jumping through.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It has to seem
when I
like
think about it, because
it
it cheats probably. So
yeah,
I'm just
it
gonna-
doesn't know where you were at the end.
was it
knows
at the
last-
round end of the last one, or is it round start here?
4:05 round start here.
Okay,
Every time I list a number, that's the number
The early,
before it
yeah.
happened.
right.
Okay, so see, that was a
Isn't
good
that a
item
bunch of
confirm.
nonsense?
You jump forward, I toss a cloud, I combo. But unfortunately, I could have delayed my roll to go forward, make use of it. But I didn't. I rolled backwards. Then I had to roll again to get close again and
Right.
make use of it.
It's a messy
And then I
kinda
didn't have any of the
situation.
advantage I would have had otherwise,
Right.
which gave you all this opportunity to do stuff. So yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go from where I've just rolled backwards. Okay, so that hits.
Okay. I get
I
hit.
hit
I
your
get hit.
vines, hit combos. I roll backwards. I item toss. I'm about to roll forwards, I believe. Okay, I just walk forwards.
Yeah.
I don't commit, which is fair. That is
Yeah.
a good call. But unfortunately, I've lost all that advantage. You would have been cornered.
Yeah. Yeah. It would have been pretty devastating.
Yeah, that would have been a round win off a single item if I could. Well, not necessarily a round win, but
It was very unusual.
70% chance round win, probably maybe 80% chance. Just to go off win odds, just based on a single item confirm. Clouds at round start are powerful because Rook has to commit to the jump immediately, and if you're doing item toss round start, which you shouldn't be doing all the time, but you should be doing every exact. It's sometimes fine, and when it's sometimes fine, it's sometimes really, really good. Because, like here, it was hugely explosive. If that were a coin, it would have been pretty good. 1 damage and advantage. It was allowed 2 damage, maybe 3 damage if I could jump. Huge amount of knockback, huge amount of frame advantage. If that were fireworks, it would be okay. I'd have time to block and throw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had time to roll, so I had time to block and throw. So yeah, that's pretty good. That's Oki into fireworks. That's I can do any sort of mix-up I want. I could do a cross-up roll. You've got meter, unfortunately, but if you didn't have meter, I could do a cross-up roll. And you've got to guess which side it is. You can't throw punish because of the fireworks. If I get it right, that's 3 to 4 damage. Maybe more if I can then combo off the firework.
Right.
But that's iffy. That only happens sometimes. Combos from that are they happen sometimes, not all the time. I think with fireworks then throw, it's generally pretty good. But that's late, so maybe one of the fireworks would have already come down. I don't know. Because I only know the rules for if I'm doing item toss throw Oki. I don't know the rules for item toss block throw. But yeah, that is this game. Next game, I've only got 3 things because that was when the stream started. So 1:30 is a good example of mini lums as
Round 1.
1:30. Let me hop over there. Oh, it's gonna be late in this one.
and then in quick succession there's also a 1:40.
Yeah, you cut out a little bit. You were saying 130 is a good example of something?
Mini Lums as a shield versus Vines.
Yeah.
And then at 140 and 145. And then that's everything that I've got listed. We have to just do it on the fly or with what you've got.
I was thinking of just doing one more and then calling it probably, because we had like 20 games. It's a
Yeah,
lot to...
I think it was 18.
Yeah, it was something very close.
Okay, so here we're about to see mini Lums and mini stuff as a shield, I think. Yeah, this is where it starts. I'm about to talk item toss a mini Lum, I'm pretty sure.
No, I missed it. That's okay.
There's the mini
Didn't
Lum.
need to get hit there. Yeah, so the mini lum's here. So I get a hit,
Vines,
but
and that's there.
that's a good example
you
of
get
also
the
a
hit,
very
but-
dangerous vines, not only because the mini lum, but
Yeah.
the fireworks and everything else made it prohibitively dangerous.
Yeah, and the mini Lums were the fireworks bonus. But also notably, that was a good example of key health. I was at 2 HP. At 1 HP, that Vines would have won.
Right, right. And that's another thing too, that I couldn't have caught you with a jump super there, so it was a pretty safe situation. But something that,
Yeah.
that Rook wants to be sensitive to as well.
Okay, 140 is just an example of back throw into back Aoki. I noticed I did.
Yeah, here it
Because,
is.
yeah, back throw, I item toss, I back A. That's Aoki.
Hey.
Oh, yeah, that was the next thing I had. I had 145. You used jump super to dodge a coin.
Yes. Get out of
Because-
here, coin.
I think entirely hurt box shape.
Yeah, well, it's
Maybe-
the hurt box, and I'm sure the invincibility frames helped out too in the.
I
sort
think
of
the
vital
invincibility ended before the coin got out of you.
moment. Yeah, something like that. We can hop back and look at it.
So I think there probably are cases where the invincibility does save you from coins. I feel like this wasn't one of.
I think that would have hit me normally. Gonna say. We'll
Yeah,
see.
that was absolutely about to hit
Yeah,
you.
and then pulls it back.
Oh
and
no, it
also
definitely gets
keeps me
past you
invincible.
during the invuln. It's gone after the invuln, so we don't actually get to see whether it's tucked your legs in enough or not.
Yeah.
Maybe you're. But I'm pretty sure from when I've done anti your head crush, your hurt box is pretty accurate to your shape right now.
Yeah, that seems pretty likely. Things are sometimes problematically accurate to their shape, so wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, like in this case, your head is farther forward, and your legs are kind of awkward because of the
Yeah.
way they tuck in. So I have to move further forwards to hit you than usual.
Yeah. So
Whereas with, say, a forward jump A, I don't have to move.
I do think
George,
this is
fine.
a pretty questionable head crush, though. It worked out in this very specific case. It was sort of fortunate that it did happen the way it did.
Yeah.
But
It's spending
when-
meter on it.
when
but-
Lum throws a coin at this kind of spacing, roll always wins. Rook doesn't have an option
Yeah.
if he's in the air.
I was going for a much more fun thing, though. I was going for a mid-air juggle.
Yeah.
Because I thought the coin was guaranteed.
Mhm.
And even if it wasn't, Vines loses to a jump A there.
Vines should win. Vines is very quick startup.
Oh,
Even
okay,
if it's
never
strange. Vines, it's weird because its hit box is pretty high, so it sometimes doesn't hit right away. But whenever we're close, like our characters'
that'd be
bodies
why
are
I
close
thought
to
it had a high
touching,
startup then.
it's like a 7-frame startup move.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very quick.
That's tiny.
Uh-huh. So, but the critical thing is it's sort of Rook's torso-ish area is what matters, so you probably end up running into it. Characters that shift their hurt boxes down with dive kicks or whatever sometimes are
Yeah.
more favorable.
Yeah, and if the coin did hit, my jump A combos, maybe my roll combos, maybe it doesn't. Either way, that's 2 damage and a lot of screen space. And then I'm out of things.
Yep.
That's a good example of just Vines as a mix-up.
But,
I
yeah,
might have to jump, I might have to block, I should have rolled out.
it was
really.
a prediction
Oh,
that you
I
were going to
couldn't, I
either
couldn't
toss an
confidently
item.
roll.
Yeah,
I couldn't confidently roll either because an earthquake.
Oh, you could. You have to guess. My guess was that
Yeah,
the
confidently, I couldn't safely.
Yeah.
It was an option. It just wasn't a winning. It wasn't the win.
it's not guaranteed.
It wasn't a solved situation.
Yeah. So in that kind of spot, the Vines is predicting that Lum's going to jump back melon or just jump for space or try and toss an item out of some sort of desperation.
Yeah.
Any of those things.
But yeah, after this, I am out of stuff.
Okay.
So we're up to whatever you want to do.
Okay. Well, I've got one very specific replay we can maybe use to close out looking at stuff.
Okay, and then you said we were going to do a set, did you?
I don't know if I'll have time, unfortunately.
Okay,
Maybe we can play a couple
that's fair.
games. Be fun
It would be. Plus, it would be a good way to try to see if
to
we could
try and
enact some stuff
demonstrate
we've figured
things.
out.
Okay, it's this one
Like,
here.
I've got cartwheels to try to adapt on and dice.
Yeah.
Dice on you earthquaking a mini lum.
So we've talked about some of these points before, so I'm going to be pretty quick as I go over some of them. But this opener is one of the really common ones. Lum's back A and rook forward jumping. So back A is good because it prevents rook from walking forward. It gets Lum space whenever it's blocked, and you can set up item toss stuff after it too.
Yeah.
On rook's side, the forward jump lets him threaten some late air options, so he can splash or do a vines or an earthquake.
So well, it's not low committal. It's you haven't fully committed yet.
Yeah, so the thing for rook is that you get to react to whatever item comes out of Lum. It is very important if Lum does an item toss. And even if Lum doesn't do anything, the critical thing is it lets rook start taking space right away. It's important to know, if you want to use this, kind of how different items interact with this jump forward. Coin is quite bad for rook. Everything else is pretty acceptable. And across this game, we're going to see some different examples so we can sort of compare and contrast as we get to them for openers.
The worst we've really seen is if you vines and I happen to item or fireworks, as we discussed. Those are the two things to really worry about if you vine.
At round start specifically, I think you're mostly worried about coin because there's no good answer for it for rook if he jumped. You just get hit. So finding
I was going with the other things that we'd already seen. Well, we'd seen one of them and discussed the other one.
Yeah, something like round start fireworks is actually really handy for rook. I don't know if we'll see an example, but we'll talk about it
Lum doesn't
later,
get to item toss the entire time. Item toss round start fireworks is circumstantially good for Lum if he can then get an item toss.
Yeah, somehow get space. So
I've never seen that, so that's not common.
So next thing is we're talking in this post opener bit. So let me just do a little bit of so what Lum does here after the opening, the moment of opening, I guess, the back A and the jump forward. Lum just holds back, right? So when Lum holds back, it's winning against a predictive vines, and it leaves open the option of jumping out of earthquake on reaction. So it's pretty strong and safe. Now, Rook's sort of idea here is by doing a splash, the earlier Rook does it, the earlier it triggers proximity block, which lets him close space. The earlier you do it, the easier it is for Lum to reaction roll you, though. In this situation, splash whiffs, but it's very hard as a defender to stop holding back because you don't know if it's going to hit or not.
Yeah.
So in this situation, I think it's like for Rook to get value, it's a very solid opportunity to just do a throw as he lands from the splash.
I feel like it's a knowledge check because I think it can never not whiff if Lum's been holding back. But
the splash.
Time,
if you just
that's pretty obscure knowledge that you wouldn't want to mess up on.
If Rook, it's like an estimation thing, because if Rook does forward jump A this high, then it locks Lum down and he gets a block if Lum doesn't roll.
Oh, okay. I see so many whiffs in that situation.
You notice, like in this situation, it's late, Lum's backing up. Proximity block only sets in, as soon as the active frames are starting here. But if Rook does it up here, then Lum can be trapped in proximity block at the point Rook's like at this height. And then he tags Lum with his head or something. So the important thing isn't so much that it's like a round start specific thing, but in general, you can always, as Rook, throw out, oh, we got a bot in the chat. Let me take care of that real quick.
Yep.
How do I ban /ban?
That sounds like it might work.
We'll find out. Sorry about that. Derailing. Blame the bots. So.
Yay!
Let's see. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So as Rook, you can do sort of option. Yeah, you can do sort of an option select. Whenever
the late option is unreactable. I was thinking about it. And it's a knowledge check that Lum could know to stop blocking. No, Lum couldn't. Lum couldn't know you did a jump A there.
And like if Lum wants to like stop blocking to get like a Yomi, then a late Earthquake can catch Lum too, depending on what Lum's paying attention to or trying to go for. Ideally, Lum's reacting to everything.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But I'd say what Lum's correct option there is well, keep holding back, and because that's pretty successful.
Oh.
And like you said, reaction roll.
So it depends. If you can get a reaction roll, it's good. But the thing that Rook wants to threaten, whenever you have a splash like this that you're not sure if it's going to hit, as a sort of heuristic idea, you can always tap throw at the time you expect the jump in to hit. If the jump in hits, the throw disappears.
True.
If the jump in whiffs, then you get a throw as soon as you land. And this is something that can be exploited by an opponent who thinks that you're going to very consistently go for these throws on these whiffed jump ins.
Yeah, Rook in particular, he can do that.
Sorry, you might have cut out. Yeah.
I was too far away from the mic, I think.
Okay.
Rook specifically can delay because his jump in slows him down, so he lands later, so he can actually do it as a proper mix-up.
Rook's is more of a real mix-up than other characters, and also his hitbox is a little unusual in the fact that it doesn't extend super far away from his body like a lot of characters do when they land. So even though Rook's very, very close to connecting, he doesn't, and he ends up in throw range at the end of it. So it's something that Rook can leverage, and you'll see a lot of situations across this game, I think, that are like, they're like a mix-up type situation where Rook could throw or he could not throw, and I didn't capitalize on them, but there's something to
They're an
here.
optimization. They're a way to get better at the matchup. They're
Right.
one of the areas to get better. Like I've got all my Carwell, all the dice, better item confirms with different ways of taking advantage of the different bits of advantage I get. I have stuff to deal with Earthquake. I have better stuff for dealing with lands, neutral A with dice instead of back A. There's all those different optimizations. This is one of the ones you've got on the Rook side.
Yeah, and Lum can always, if Lum doesn't want to deal with this, Lum can always anti-air with neutral A if Lum wants something lower committal or something like that. It doesn't come up in our games very much, but if Lum plays the sort of conventional style, it's very similar to jumping. It's like jumping in on most other characters with their anti-air. You can use Earthquake outside of Lum's reach to punish it.
Yeah, so I'd say the usual magic trick also applies where if Lum has meter, he can jackpot as a much more secure anti-air.
Sure, yeah.
Walk forward, jackpot, very strong because you get all that time to walk forward because it's so fast. So you can also catch them out of an Earthquake out neutral A range.
Right. Okay, so that was just a little thing about the opening interaction, and something that you want to watch out for as Rook is these situations where you can get the proximity block to threaten a real mix-up on landing.
Yeah, this was the first 5 seconds.
Yeah.
The start of the round of big.
So
The biggest one of us starts winning moments in this matchup have always been, oh, we've tried out a new round start option. The other person doesn't know the counter.
It's true. So with
like jump forward A for Lum, the counterplay is head cross.
or an early jump forward A from Rook if you don't have it available. But
That's a weird one because it doesn't beat anything else.
Right. Whenever we get to this, you might notice I'm doing a bunch of jumping. It's like Rook on a pogo stick.
Yeah, and I suffer from that. It's the worst as Lum.
So the reason why I'm jumping, though, if you remember what we were doing in those previous rounds, there are quite a few jumps where I would delay my options and get, like, I would do Earthquake because I'd expect Lum to stay grounded and that sort of thing. Try and punish an item toss. In this situation, if Lum's jumping around, Rook's splash has really good coverage on a lot of stuff. It's just risky if Lum decides to sit it out on the ground and be patient.
Yeah,
So-
or in this case, we were at a very, very specific range. Ever since round start, we were both just jumping in the same.
Yeah, so it looks pretty silly, but it's
Without-
more of a product of the way that we've played this matchup out against each other. So it's not necessarily going to be something to model your
Yeah.
games after, but it's the reason why it has value in this situation for Rook anyway. Is
And we both have that sense of spacing where there's going to be lots of jump A's.
is
then,
that yeah? If
And
you're
then I get to the corner, I challenge it with my own jump A, it trades.
Yeah.
I think overall that's off for you.
so this
You're-
situation, the
You've still got me in the corner.
jump forward A worked out
I reset,
okay. The fact this trade is actually I think really excellent for Lum. So
but
for Rook, we've talked about this before, but just forcing a blocked splash is very winning. So
true. Yeah.
in these situations, if Lum is staying on the ground and trying to play more defensive, Rook's got a lot of options too. So this whole game plan of being a pogo and jumping around is meant to punish passive, safe sort of Lum decisions,
Yeah.
or jumping around like this. It does not work against the grounded stuff like roll, but I think we saw earlier in our games that roll,
It's
like
hard
punishing
for-
it with earthquake is fine. You have to make a
And
decision
yeah.
on it. And this
And
in this
it's
situation,
scary
it was
for
splash.
Yeah. It's scary for Lum to get into a position to do that because he has to land and then roll.
Mhm.
And then what if that doesn't work? What if he gets earthquake? What if he didn't jump?
Yeah.
What if Rook was waiting there? You don't want to be rolling direct a Rook who hasn't committed to a button.
It depends. Like it.
Asking to get thrown, asking to get blocked, and then you're just in a really disadvantaged.
Right. It comes down to a guessing game, like a lot of things
Yeah.
do. So it.
And a
Yeah.
terrifying one.
Yeah. So
Because what Lum stands to win is freedom, maybe.
Mhm.
What Rook stands to win is the round.
So what Lum gets here though when this trades is really strong because Lum flips out, Rook gets knocked down.
Yeah.
And the roll forward here is really important, I think, for Lum players to pay attention to is that Lum doesn't want to. You knocked Rook away, maybe an instinct or an idea is to take that space and try and like throw items reflexively to try and get something strong or to buy some time. Rolling is really valuable because throwing items at a close range restricts movement in a way that stuff at long range doesn't, even if it feels like it's lower risk. So
There's also another very big reason,
Mhm.
which is if you knock someone far enough back, they hit the edge of the screen.
Yes, it's true. There's a little bit of this
But
here I
if
checked.
you move forwards,
You get a
they
little
move
bit
further.
more. Yeah,
this
Rook would have
is
been stuck.
a thing that is most important with clouds.
Mm-hmm.
But I picked it up from De Grey. De Grey lands Truth Punch, and then he immediately just jump Bs forward.
Mm-hmm.
Because that buys so much extra screen space.
Right.
Because what you want is as soon as you get a big knockback, you've got all that frame advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Spend it getting screen space. You don't need all that frame advantage.
Yeah, and long range item tosses don't get you the same kind of value either. So if you
Yeah.
stood back there, you'd just be giving up a lot of space for Rook to close back in.
Yeah, because once you've got enough frame advantage to item toss, you're set.
Mm-hmm.
Spend the rest if you can on getting other advantage. There's diminishing returns on too much.
Right. So
You want a good mix of everything.
yeah. So at this point, this is I think going to demonstrate the idea of item toss being strong in a good way because as Lum starts throwing items as Pogo Rook is gone in this situation.
Pogo Rook is the mid-screen Rook has advantage situation. This is the mid-screen Lum has advantage situation.
Yeah, so with items coming out, their coin and mini Lum are both strong in the moment. Other stuff is sort of a mixed situation. But staying grounded is important here because Rook gets to react more safely to whatever comes out. And I think also importantly, staying grounded lets Rook capitalize on bad luck with item tosses because Rook controls the space where the food lands. So if Rook jumps forward here and it's a bad item for Lum, like a food is about to land here. If Rook jumped forward, maybe he pressures Lum, maybe he doesn't. The food gets to be Lum's, almost definitely, is how that tends to work out. So
and I'd say when I toss that food there, I've got three options as Lum.
Mm-hmm.
I could melon, I think that's what I'm doing here.
Mm-hmm.
I could back A to try to catch you picking up the food, but you're not walking for long.
Yeah.
But that does get me some frame advantage, but so does melon. and you've just walked forward, you're not jumping to find. So that both are valid options here.
Yep.
Or I could just go for another item toss. Assume you'll pick it up, so it's off the field, go for another one. I've got another item out there. Hopefully it won't be.
Sure, yeah.
And I think we're about to see a melon. Oh, we saw an
Actually,
item
we
toss.
got another item toss. So in this case, this is sort of Rook continuing to stay grounded, and Rook really gets paid off again for getting to control the space where the items are going to fall.
Yeah.
The thing that happens next here is a predictive thing that you don't always use, but in this case, Rook reached a spacing where a ground C is useful.
Yeah, ground C comes out earlier than you think.
Yeah, so the important thing is to recognize when you're walking somebody down as Rook what spacing that if they commit to a ground option in any way, does ground C catch them here?
Yeah,
So-
and that's really good because normally what I would do, and it would work.
Oh, you cut out right when you said what you were going to do.
Normally what I do is I would do exactly, and it would work.
Oh, it happened again. This is pretty amazing
for
comedic
heck's sake.
timing.
Normally what I would do is I would do exactly this, and
Okay.
it would work.
Gotcha.
But because you knew the spacing, it didn't work.
Gotcha.
So yeah, most players would have kept walking forward a bit longer than that, and they would have been poked by a neutral A.
Right.
Whereas because you know it, all I can do is go for pokes with back A, which require recognizing the situation and doing a much higher committal, much higher risk move.
Yeah.
It would get a knockdown if it works, but you could jump it.
Right. And something like ground B is something that Lum could look at doing here too, potentially, because
True.
with like something like ground C, it's got the reach, but if Lum makes contact first, then he rebounds off and is airborne and doesn't get caught at all.
Yeah, so
Rook's
I'd
not-
say
Yeah.
I'd say the thing Lum wants to do is, before Rook gets to ground C spacing, recognize this is a walk and pick one of back A and roll. Mix between them so Rook can't consistently do the same punish.
Yeah. So you
Because
can
it has
do
to
those
choose
kinds
between
of things.
Earthquake and forward jump A. It has to do one or the other. Actually, no, you could land. So don't always do that. Sometimes block.
Yeah.
Sometimes just keep holding back.
Sometimes you wait to react, right? Because the other
Yeah.
person can do things that are change the situation. Like Rook will want to mix in jump sometimes as a predictive sort of measure too. But
Yeah.
we've talked about the sort of upsides of being on the ground, so I think we've got a good feel for that. And
Yeah. So
the
what
other
Lum's doing
thing-
is a mix between back A, roll, and nothing.
Mhm.
What Rook's doing is the option counterplay for both of those.
Lum can jump around too, is a thing to keep in mind, but ground C done predictively like that tends to be less punishable unless the opponent's being really aggressive. So if Lum jumps forward and does jump 4A, they get like a 3 damage combo. But the thing you evaluate is whether Lum is in a position where they want to, I guess. Is that the thing that
Yeah.
they would do of their own motivation without knowing what you're committing to? And if the answer is no, because it's horribly dangerous, then it's not so bad to commit to something that loses to it, right? There's so many
Yeah.
other things Rook can do.
Like if a character is has an unsafe move that is reactable and punishable and block, the opponent has
Landslide.
no reason not to block. Yeah, like landslide, and there is no incentive to that move.
Well, that's
You're free to create an incentive, a small incentive to do that move. By which I mean you're free to do something which loses. Because, one, it's very low risk. Two, if they do start using it, you benefit. You get to react to that every single other time.
so
Block.
yeah, I think it's actually inverted though. Especially like landslide's a good example against zoners. Is that zoners don't use fireballs because landslide can beat it. Zoners want to use fireballs because it's a predictive tool that's usually very safe, that creates a favorable mix-up situation for them in a reactable sort of way. Like a Jaina Fireball isn't meant to deal damage, usually. A Jaina Fireball is meant to create a situation where the opponent will jump and now they're in an unfavorable mix-up because they decided to jump to keep closing distance.
Yeah, and a good Jaina has an option for every single play.
Yeah, so the idea in that sort of situation is that fireballs are predictive. They're not motivated necessarily by the opponent doing something.
They're proactive, safe moves.
They control space and create situations that are favorable. And a move like Landslide is a move that you use predictively to punish the opponent's predictive action. It's the idea is that you think they're going to decide to do something, so you guess. And the function of Landslide is to make them want to react, to wait, to not want to guess, because it punishes them taking predictive action. So a character like Rook really benefits from something like Landslide when it, like you just said, like there's no reason to not block, you just always block. If you always block, that's when the landsliding character, your Rook, gets the most advantage, because they have incentivized doing nothing. And now, instead of forcing a favorable mix-up with a Jaina fireball, Jaina's doing nothing because she doesn't want to get hit by a landslide. So you walk to the corner, and then you throw her.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So that's an example where landslide is positive value no matter how much health. There are cases where landslide is if you have much more health than them, but there are cases where landslide is always negative. But maybe you want to use it sometimes just to shift them into doing different behavior, but not often because you don't want to lose from it.
Yeah.
There are lots of different reasons.
It's a way to communicate with your opponent about what you want the matchup to focus on. Which is an interesting sort of way to look at it. So I think this basically sums up what I've got to say about the round. We'll play out the rest of it. I think it's just a throw, and then there's some other option that happens.
Okay, I'll go for melon, a
for
coin. So I've got some items set up, but you're about to get the mini-lum landslide.
Yeah, bad luck on it. Yeah,
counter.
That was just an unfortunate mistiming on it. It could have gone further, but we know that landsliding through a thundercloud is a pretty sketchy proposition. The hit stop just ruins Rook's chances of doing stuff. Wasn't a very safe
You can
decision.
tell how much. By the way, you can tell how much we've played it because I recognized you were going to landslide.
Yeah.
Thunderclap just. I couldn't tell that in the because there's just too much information. I need to.
Right.
The thunderclap is happening. It's happening in a position that we will.
You keep
And
cutting
then you
out
can
a little
armor
bit,
through
by the
the-
way.
So pardon?
You keep cutting out just little bits in the middle of sentences.
I needed to recognize that you could thunderclap to destroy the mini-lam at that exact thing, and so that thunderclap doing.
Right.
I didn't even have time to react to it being a thunderclap. All I had time to react to was movement.
Ah, I see.
So what I shouldn't do is that, because I could predict it was a thunderclap from spacing,
Yeah.
but I hadn't recognized the spacing. That's one of the things I need to work. Dice on reaction to your options. Don't do it if your option is probably thunderclap. Do it if your option is probably an earthquake to destroy a mini-lam.
Yeah.
Because that's a very safe assumption and works. as far as I
Should be
can tell.
rare, yeah.
Yeah, it's uncommon, but it's an optimal.
With next round we're gonna look at here, there's an interaction close to the start here. This is a good example. The ground C and there's a jump B, is that the intent from Rook is to catch a grounded option, just like the previous situation. But if we go back real quick, I think we can see that it's a little more hopeful compared to the last one. The idea is that Lum's jumping here. Lum might melon still. Lum might do a jump A, or they might land him back up. The odds that this ground C actually catches anything is pretty unlikely. So I think it wasn't maybe a good example of Rook wanting to do something, but yeah,
But
be
that
wary of
wasn't
this
an
when
option
you're
that
looking
worked.
for the walk down grab kind of thing. On the other hand,
If Lum's jumping back, Lum has no reason to get into your throw range.
yeah, so the upside is if Lum does a melon around here, then the melon can catch Rook. The hit stop extends the grab's active frames, and Lum falls into it.
Yeah, because
There-
this is just barely in the throw range still.
There's
So the question is,
situations,
yeah, so I'd say that's slight misplay on Lum's part compared to delaying it, but not huge. because there's still reasons not to delay it.
It depends on what Lum's going for, because if Lum wants to like catch Rook jumping to do a jump B, because you have to sort of predict on those axes too. An early melon is safer against some of the air action Rook might commit to. Anyway,
this is the case of the rule is aim for the foot, aim for the front foot, leading foot, I should say.
The other thing I want to bring up is that Lum does a jump B here. I think this jump B is very high risk and pretty questionable. It works quite well in this situation, right? Rook commits to predictive action. But
an example of me messing around with cartwheel that I shouldn't do.
Lum wants to watch out for the fact that Rook's got full meter in this situation. So when committing to this predictive cartwheel idea,
it works out here.
It's a gamble, like similar to landslide, where you're guessing that it's going to catch them committing to something. But the downside in this case, if you miss it, is Rook spends super, but you take 3 and end up knocked down. Very scary.
Yeah. Do I get the combo of this? I think I do.
You do. So this result is very good for Lum. The space and damage is really great. And after the ground B hit, you immediately go for a back A, which punishes the walk forward too. So this whole sequence went from Rook being closer to the corner, kind of getting Lum pushed back, to Lum getting 3 damage, followed by a knockdown and a lot of space. And now Rook's pretty close to the corner, and Lum got to throw an item to set up. It was a cherry, which isn't super impactful.
Yeah, what I'm expecting here is a forward A or a back A that is about meaty. Maybe I mistime it slightly, but hopefully meaty.
Yeah, so the
what I'm dreading
here,
is the weak item.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the forward A.
I did the right thing!
Yay! The thing that happens next here, so Lum's taken space, Rook's on the ground. This is some of those grounded item toss ideas. Here, Rook jumps in reaction to the fact that item toss is happening without reacting to what the item was. If you look here, the fact that an item happened is what kind of motivates this idea of a jump. The fact that Lum's stopping, I'm going to do something. When this happens and Rook's in the air, there's not a good answer to coin. So when you're deciding to jump as Rook, you have to play around this idea.
If you're reacting to an item toss, and you're reacting to an item toss that depends on what the item is, try to see what the item is first. You can, the item is generally visible from about frame 1. So it's reactable. Lum is reacting to it, you can react to it too.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, whereas for Lum, there is no delay from reacting to it, Rook has some delay from it.
So I guess the thing I wanted to make clear, is that if you're jumping as Rook, and you're going to jump to try and get advantage from an item toss, you can't wait to jump to see what the item is. If you wait to jump to see what the item is, I think you...
Lum recovers in time?
You get later, you lose the advantage you would have gotten. So there might be some argument that you, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's this idea that you're going to decide if it's a coin if you want to jump or not. But...
Yeah. I think the answer there is you don't jump, do other things reacting to the item toss.
Yeah.
Like, I'd suggest maybe ground C.
So the thing that
or even more walk up and throw.
Yeah, I would think about if you decide to jump, it's not always downside, but you have to account for the really big blowouts of getting hit by a coin. And this happens even if you're not reacting to item toss, but you're doing that kind of predictive jump. Because if coin comes up, even if you react to it, you get hit for 2 and knocked down, is how it should work out. It doesn't always, right? But in this situation, if Lum gets to see that it's a coin and that Rook jumped and puts it all together, then Lum gets a roll and combos and definitely has full corner space.
Yeah, this was an interesting example because also it was a predictable item toss. It was a space where Lum was very incentivized to do it. It was the first moments while he was incentivized to do it.
Right.
So you could very reasonably assume he was going to item toss there and react to that properly.
Yeah. So
much more reactable than an item toss in neutral.
Yeah. So now I think in a few more seconds we're gonna have a good example of a better jump versus an item toss kind of situation. This isn't predictive,
So that was a
this
jump
isn't
before
reactive
the
to an
toss.
item. This is you do a back A. There's a jump. This is a very common situation that happens in our games.
Yeah, I'm failing to react to the fact you jumped because you jumped to the back A.
And in this situation, this is a very strong jump for Rook because Rook has time to react. So in this case, Rook reacts with vines, which is actually, I think, incorrect. It's
Yeah,
maybe
the minimum rift.
simplification to say it's incorrect, but so vines here covers Lum's jumping options, which is good. It's threatening something gets knocked down. The thing is though is that this vines didn't have to happen. The mini Lum wasn't directly threatening Rook on his jump in. Rook could have empty jumped in and gone for a throw, or what would have been strong in this case, he can do an earthquake. So it's important to recognize, like when the mini Lum is tossed at the spacing, it's not a requirement that you use vines. It's a mix-up, and you want to play around it accordingly. So like an earthquake here, very powerful for Rook. Gets a
Also,
knockdown.
instead of vines to beat Lum's air options, I'd suggest forward jump A because
It depends.
Lum jump.
Forward jump A could work, but it gets a flip out on jump, which isn't as
true.
desirable, right?
It might catch the pre-jump frame, so does that still flip out?
If it catches
I
the
don't think it
pre-jump
does.
frames, then it doesn't flip out. Yeah, that'd be
Oh, nice.
powerful for Rook. And then you'd have to see if like maybe Rook gets a micro walk neutral A. Lots of things to figure out or consider.
Yeah, and
And-
this will all be improvisational. This is all
Right. And another
you
thing
jumped
that
in. It happened to be the spacing. It happened to.
Rook gets in the situation too if he hits Lum. I'm pretty sure the hit stop, like in this case, hit stop gives Lum enough time that the mini Lum hits.
Yeah, and
if
it's the corner,
Lum
so
jumps, the
I'm
hit
guessing.
stop.
Yeah, it's corner, so I'm guessing combo.
Yeah, if Lum jumps, then Rook gets the opportunity to hit Lum, and the hit stop means that he hits the mini Lum out of the air too. Is sort of the opposite end. So there's upside to vines. I wanted to highlight that it's not a locked situation like against a coin. You vines and hope for the best. Mini Lums are active, but the arc they take is very different. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I didn't juggle.
So, in this sort of situation here, I was going to say that the ground B is a good option for Lum there too when you think about the fact that it makes the risk of using it much less dangerous. Oki for Rook will be awkward, even if he gets a knockdown with Earthquake or something. He might be forced into blocking the mini Lum at the moment Lum wakes up, and then Lum can jump back or get out for free, or even do pressure if he wants to really take advantage wherever it's found. But so yeah, ground B is good there. Those are the kinds of things you want to measure whenever you're picking your mix-up option as Rook in that sort of late jump
Yeah.
situation.
And this is the sort of this is a very good example of the sort of situation we talked about earlier as well, where mix-ups come up organically. You do things, and then they turn into mix-ups.
Yeah, it's a
This is one of those. Lum could jump, or Lum could not jump. You react to you don't get to react. You just
Right.
have to
and
decide which you assume.
it's a natural sort of result of Rook jumping in late like that, and it works
Yeah.
that way against a lot of characters. But Lum's item tosses definitely add an extra thing to consider. They add motivations to each side that isn't always the same. So like in that case, roll is stronger with mini Lum covering it. If it were something like fireworks, roll isn't necessarily stronger, but it still serves a similar sort of function where Lum might be covered. If it's like a cake or a cherry, then it's probably quite a bit riskier. You think about it, there's no protection anyway, it's standard risk. So they're the things you want to think about. Next thing here at 48, 47-ish, Lum's tossing a bomb into the corner. Bomb, Thundercloud, and Fireworks are all pretty good items for Rook to see in the corner. I think Cloud actually
I'm
just
looking
goes
at this and
straight
I'm
past.
scared. Rook
Yeah.
is Lum is too close to the corner right now.
Yeah. So this kind of, in general though, like the delayed activation stuff are pretty good items for Rook to see in the corner when there's no other items on the field, when there's no mini Lums or that sort of problem going on, or dice. Because it gives him escape chances. If Lum wants to continue pressure, Lum usually has to commit to things that are risky, like doing some sort of melon that's vulnerable. As a side note, this is probably checkmate. I think... Why would it be checkmate? I mentioned... Oh yeah, so when Lum throws the bomb here, I actually had a window to throw here. I didn't recognize it, which is kind of interesting. At the situation where Lum gets this neutral A and roll, though, I think it's effectively checkmate. The bomb's got chip potential, and Lum has ground super to work as an anti-air. This is that kind of common situation we talked about before.
And if you block the bomb, I could roll.
Exactly. So just waiting there is very strong for Lum.
But,
In this situation, got opportunity to get out though.
Yeah, I shouldn't have jumped back. I had no reason to jump back. You weren't
Right. Yeah. So, like as
weren't
Rook,
threatening anything that was not safe from the bomb. The vines was the only thing you could do, and I could block that.
yeah, you're happy to look for those opportunities as Rook, or if your opponent's being savvy and waiting, you can look at doing things like a jump back earthquake to try and catch them if they're reacting to the wrong thing or they do something with poor spacing. You're looking for whatever out you can find.
Yeah.
So, in this round ends, sadly for Rook, with a very reactable roll.
It happens.
Yeah, it
happens a lot. I mean, you were trying to do the throw, weren't you?
No, I wasn't. So that's the interesting thing I wanted to bring up, is that roll's really risky from this range, right? It's got 20 plus frames of reactability. But in the situation, Lum can get a lot of edge by understanding what the opponent's worried about. So in this case, and this might have also been the sort of like learning moments that we go for sometimes when we're playing games, is I wanted to clap the mini Lum. As ill-advised as that would be, I had this idea, I think, that I could clap the mini Lum and catch the roll. And at the moment, like I started, was far, far, far too late, right? I only got a couple frames into the move. But
yeah, it just looked like Rook was like...
Yeah, like going for the throw. So I think that like having a mini Lum on the field and knowing that your opponent tries to clap them, that's stuff on their mental stack. It's a popular idea.
Plus,
right?
as you toss a mini Lum, they're looking at the mini Lum.
Sure.
So they can't react as fast to what you do.
Yeah.
So, for example, the roll is less 20 plus frames. Well, it's still 20 plus frames.
It's still very sketchy, I think.
It's a long time, but it's less so.
If you're going to pick a time to do rolls like this, it's an okay time to use it when you've got other things piled onto your opponent's mind. Better to do it like this than like at total dead neutral and nothing's going on.
Yeah, so, sleight of hand technique rather than just throw out a random roll.
Yep, and I think that it's also worth noting that it was risky. Lum does have full super meter, so he's got ground super to sort of cut down on risk, even if Oki starts. There are some options. It's not like Lum's going to get out of it for free. Probably going to die if they get knocked down, but...
Yeah, and if Rook did block it, then there's a mini Lum there. Lum's happy with that state of neutral.
Yeah, it's all good. So...
Particularly when he can go for any trade.
Right. Okay, so going into the next round, we've got another item toss opener here. And in this case, it's going to be coin. So in this case, Rook doesn't react properly to the fact that it was a coin, just gets counter hit out of the earthquake startup.
And I missed my item confirm.
It doesn't super matter because Lums should basically always get the same thing. Yeah, Lum missed it too, which is okay. But that's the situation you want to watch out for.
I bet he didn't jump, but I didn't look at who I looked.
So
I just went, that was a walk up because. Oh wait, that's what, you didn't know it was going to be.
So there's sort of item pressure and Rook looking to do things to hit Lum. That was a close finds. Being able to be at a situation where your jump can catch vines, like especially his counter hit, is very powerful. It's just unfortunate for Rook. Misses right there. But
I was pushing it. I should have been
a little risky.
Where Rook can't vines you. Like if you delayed vines, I would have.
Yeah, I think could have been the case for sure. The way that it affects his momentum would be pretty favorable. So
because it stops your downward momentum.
Yeah.
It was sort of you'd get your forward distance from the jump, and then you'd reset the falling.
Right. So in this case, works out okay. Use some neutral A's to break dice, which works fine too. So in this situation here, after there's a mini Lum walking Rook down, and this is always a scary position for Rook to be in. Lum can throw items and continue pressure. Lum doesn't have super, which is very handy.
Yeah,
but
Rook happens to be plus right now, but not much.
Well, and like
it's still it's not great, but it's something.
Even after blocking roll. Rook usually doesn't get a ton of leverage off of it, maybe some, but in this situation, get a clap on the mini Lum, which is good. The snowballing item advantage is back to being limited, and now Lum's gonna try and use melons and staggered items to create the pressure that I need until probably Super's online, maybe can set up a dice opportunity, something like that.
Yeah.
So in this situation,
Maybe get knocked down from a stray back eight.
yeah. So jumps
That's
are.
always.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I said that's always a joy. It's always wonderful to get a straight.
Yeah. So
That's a safe bet.
Rook can try and find the right moment to jump out and punish Lum doing a melon. That's strong, especially when there's no mini Lums on the field. In this situation, though, the thing I was really focused on was I didn't want to get rolled back into the corner, and we're at this closer spacing. And so I was very sensitive to, and I decided to predictively commit to getting throws after item tosses. So item toss comes out. This throw is because when we're at like this kind of spacing, I can't react to roll in time. Yeah, not with the 3 startup frames and everything else going on. So the thing that I decided to go for was getting these predictive rolls with the idea that they might work out. Get an empty jump here, which is fine. In this situation, like Rook could have pushed for more advantage, but I was
you didn't get
concerned.
Claudia.
Yeah, didn't get it safe enough. And then, so the idea to throw a roll after an item, it turned out to be correct. It was just far too early, was sort of the way that one worked out. So.
Yeah, I think I was taking the time to see it was a cloud
Yeah.
rather than immediate roll. I'm not certain. I wouldn't swear to it, but I think that might have been it.
Right. I want to walk back just a moment, too, with the... This situation is another good example of when Rook can clap and when he can't. So clap in reaction to a melon early like this does not work. You get counter hit. In this situation, clap was made, again, early with the intent of clearing the mini Lum, and it was made with the understanding that I might get bopped by a coin, but I can't wait to commit to it, and didn't worry about confirming it. The idea being that if it's a coin, I'm going to get hit by it and die. If it's not a coin, I clear the mini Lum and get to steal space.
Yeah, if it was a coin, you were going to get shit.
Yeah, so...
I mean, even if the coin didn't hit your foot, which likely to, but wasn't, you've got to be right in front of you. I think you can't thunderclap it anymore.
Yeah.
I can still melon. I can do melon into mini Lum into roll.
Yeah, so you want to be very familiar with the things you can clap and the things you can't. And if you're thinking about a coin coming out, how early would the clap have to happen? Are you okay with accepting the risk, right? Yeah, it's all tricky. So
yeah, there's a lot to think about. There's always so much to think about with any Rook matchup and any Lum matchup. So the combination is very fun.
Right. So that's the end of that round. Moving into the next one, we get Pogo Rook again. He's back.
Yay, similar start to before, but I crossed myself up, I think. Actually, no, I think that was a cross-up thing coming up because it was technically a cross-up, but it wasn't me. Something I could block, I think.
Yeah, I think you could. It's weird. So this whole situation is a bunch of nonsense. Rook.
Yeah, maybe I
should
could
have.
block. Maybe I could block and cross myself up. Maybe I could said cross-up, not turned around still.
Rook should have earthquaked here. Is a pretty definably right answer with the amount of startup time Rook had as well. There wasn't a lot of good motivation to Vines here. It gets a knockdown, which is fortunate for Rook. But then after this, other weird stuff, like Rook wasn't going to reach in time. Maybe he threatens ground seer, maybe a normal throw. Taking a forward A, because why not? It reaches. And then it continues to be nonsense. There's an item toss, a landslide catches Lum pressing a weird button.
The button
Yeah. I think
why wouldn't I push the button when there's a landslide on the way?
Yeah, and then it's over. So, not a lot to... Yeah. So that landslide was actually very bad. Any hit stop from an item ruins Rook's day. Lum has time to react to it and block. Like,
in theory.
Yeah, not a ton to take back from that one, but yeah,
It was fun.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a
Pretty
example
silly.
of people don't play perfectly all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go to round 5. We get another round start item toss coin. Rook reacts, gets vines. Lum has the wrong option here of getting a jump after throwing the item.
Yeah, that was a reactable vine as well. I should.
And well, that's the one where because you threw a coin, you know that you're safe to just roll every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Regardless of either Rook did something that wasn't vines and got hit, or it did vines and you're fine.
Yeah, because my fear is earthquake. That doesn't exist when I've coined.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it's a coin. I can react to that not necessarily very easily, but
With
I
focus,
should be able
yeah.
to react to that. It's a very important key to Lum play, being able to see what your item is before,
Okay.
because you have time to do it before you're actionable.
Yeah, yeah. So, a couple things I want to note here is that at 53 seconds as we approach it, we're going to have a nice Lum ground super here, I think. So, bomb prevents me from doing grounded Oki over here. I jump a little late, and as a result, get a nice ground super. Now, this trades, but it's a good example of kind of what I was talking about before, that ending the pressure situation is a pretty strong result for Lum. And
Yeah.
a totally fine usage of super. And at this point, Rook's in the corner, so Lum's actually magically reached a position that's very strong. No items out at the moment.
Really fast, but
Yeah, so gets bad luck with the cake, but gives up a little space. And then I think this is interesting. You're holding back because you want to do dice as soon as the fireworks come down. Do you get advantage by just sort of maintaining a middle distance here instead?
I mean, I was still able to do dice, but I dropped. And I value the chip over that right now.
Okay, because I was
I
thinking
can
that.
push forward and got dice out.
Because if you stand like here, I was thinking you get the same kind of result, and there's not too much Rook does that's threatening. When he gets up, I'll walk forward. I'll block the vines. Or I think. Oh, no dice. No dice.
I didn't have meter.
Oh, you didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at my meter the whole time. I'm a fool.
So was I.
Then let's see.
Okay, this.
Okay.
I think this is gonna hurt Lum here more than Rook.
We'll see. I don't think anybody gets too hurt. Yeah, that's good.
Oh, okay.
This was a learning vines. You can't really. I've been testing it. I don't think you can vines through fireworks with any reliability. And even if you can, it's very clear that it's the only thing you can do in that situation, which goes back to making it bad. So, not really worth going for, but it's kind of fun to try. The fireworks coverage makes that ground be safe, though, which is a really good thing to keep in mind, is that it gets chip, free chip, sort of. Lum wasn't going to be throwing items anyway, because fireworks are still on the field. And if Rook does something like what I did there, it's a pretty strong upside for Lum as well, comboing into fireworks. So, we got dice. We're going to have something at, right, the bomb toss stuff. So I think that...
That's going for chip out.
Yeah, I'm in chip 2. As soon as this bomb hit the field, though, I think what Rook should have done is walked forward. I wasn't sensitive enough to my own life total. But if I was going to get any sort of chances of coming out of this, I needed to be able to threaten vines on you or get some sort of, like, jump over earthquake outside of bomb range or something.
If I can't do jump A dice, I don't have 100% checkmate.
Right. So...
But not 100% checkmate.
Yeah, the result here was kind of okay in the end. Like, Lum had to spend meter to secure the round, so it's not the end of the world for Rook, but kind of losing the opportunity is unfortunate. Oh, I also noted Lum probably had some kind of jump B, neutral A, ground B block string to get a chip out off of the bomb as well.
Yeah, true.
That might be...
it'd be brave, but yeah, I could definitely do that.
You wouldn't want to get hit by bomb, because that'd be just round losing and maybe not worth worrying about.
I don't have it, but maybe earlier.
Yeah, so...
It'd be telegraphed, but also...
With bomb on the field.
Neither of us
yeah.
Until now.
If Rook's passive like that, then there's nothing really Rook's leaving himself open to do. So... Okay.
In fact, it'd be telegraphed, but that wouldn't matter. early vines and they get bombed.
We're closing in. We're making progress. This one goes the full 7, I think. So round 6 coming in.
Round 6.
Now, we've got a minute left. That's a 7-rounder, all right. There's no way this round goes to timeout.
So the item toss opener is a bomb. Hooray for Rook. So whenever there's a bomb on the opener, we've had some coins and some dangerous stuff lately. Rook kind of gets to do whatever he wants. So in this case, Rook does a splash, which is fairly early, so it really locked Lum down with proximity block. Lum could ground B it potentially, like there's stuff there, but kind of interesting to note, the fact that it was a bomb actually kind of makes it harder for Lum to pressure and punish Rook. Like, if you roll into me, you risk getting caught by your own bomb, too.
Yeah.
Kind of situation. So, with Rook, the result here is fine. Rook can also go for things like the Earthquake or the Jump B.
Yeah, I think the answer here for Lum is have meter.
Have meter, yes. That could be an answer, but you had to spend it to ship me out.
Yeah.
That's the circle of meter life trade-offs.
Yeah, spend it to end around. Now you don't have
Yep.
it
So
shapes round start. I mean, it doesn't shape round start anywhere in these games because I hadn't considered round start back a jackpot or item toss jackpot. But now I have.
So by jumping predictively over here too, this is the kind of thing where Rook's just doing a little more pogoing. Another good example, like Rook's creating the option of using vines to stop Lum's jump B. It doesn't require any corner, or it doesn't require any meter, takes the corner. So I think that jumping in this kind of way is pretty useful and valuable. The jump B is pretty optimistic though from Lum in this situation, I think, given the meter and kind of state of things.
So from there I get knocked down, landslide. Now I'm cornered.
No landslide in this case. So landslide would get me next to you, but it's one of those sketchy things of do you end up in landslide? Do you landslide up and are close enough that Rook's actually punishable for approaching? Or do you landslide up and become meaty and get to threaten that? That's a neat idea, but in this case, I think walking forward was reasonable. Being a full health situation means that Rook doesn't need to come
What I
in.
didn't realize was that you had enough time to walk up and be pretty much in throw range from that. And now you've got me cornered, so you went in throw range whenever you want.
So a predictive earthquake on fireworks is really what closes the round. Fireworks have that long delay before Rook gets to do anything, or before Rook has to block it. So in this case, get normal oaky things, they're gone. It's the normal stuff.
And yeah, I just get caught out by one of your safe jump things. You have a cross-up mix-up that might hit and up based. That's also a safe jump, and it's terrifying. And it's also extremely nested.
With Lum's super, the like not cross-up properties tend to be pretty fake, as far as being a safe jump goes. Just because Lum's super starts up so fast, it'll trade out of it, but.
Don't have me here, but in general,
no option in that situation. So I think that in that situation too, there's something to kind of watch out for, is that you're doing oaky stuff. I think in that situation I did a clap whenever there was fireworks on the field, and so I got the command throw that worked out fine for Rook. Where is it? It's back a little ways. Whenever you're Rook and there's something like fireworks in the air or bomb or mini Lums, who knows?
You're safe during throws and all that.
The thing you want to be careful of is if I knock you down, I go up here. If I do a command throw, Lum's punish is like 5 damage.
True, yeah.
Which is really, really, really bad for Rook. So whenever you're trying to pick what option you want to go for in one situation or another, Thunderclap is pretty safe. You get to, like, you can go for a throw afterward. All of the continuations are reasonably safe and free.
Yeah, and there's no situation here where it doesn't work.
Yeah.
There is where the fireworks hit you, actually.
Like if the fireworks were earlier, it would have been. But then as Rook, you want to like be sensitive to the timing and be safer. But it's something to think about when you're trying to pick your option is strike,
Yeah.
throw, they're fine. Like getting Yomi countered is fine. You take a point of damage and the fireworks go away. Lum gets a little bit of meter. It's okay. The knockdown from Yomi counter isn't even it's not quite as scary as Lum's normal throws either. He doesn't get as much time. So
Actually, I think it's about perfectly timed for him. So it's early.
Hmm?
Because his normal throw, if he mashes out.
oh yeah,
Coin.
the like coins can miss. That's true. It's less time,
So,
which
yeah,
I think
he wants to play it, but it's hard to keep that in your head. It's really
Sure.
just.
Yeah, I think having more time is to Lum's advantage, but there's some convenience that comes off the Yomi counter too.
Yeah. So what I should switch to is micro walk forward, item toss, continue walking forward.
Yeah, that's how you get the like meaty coin, and you lose some other stuff. I think off of that maybe. Like
lose,
if you throw a mini Lum or something.
That's it. You just lose cross up roll in the corner,
Yeah. Okay.
and you don't want to use cross up roll in the corner. You want to use safe man.
Yeah. We're gonna hit play to or go to next round. So opener in this case we're all pretty standard. It's a little interesting that in this case Lum does a tiny back walk before doing an item toss. I do a vines to try and catch on the way down, but the little back walk I think is a relevant part in protecting Lum from the danger.
I haven't confirmed it because labbing round start stuff is hell.
Pain. Yeah.
But I believe that is relevant.
Mhm.
I don't seem to get hurt when I do, and I
Yeah.
go through the Lum's been hit by vines at least once. So I think backwalk helps.
Yeah. So all that's good. I think we get a good example of clapping melon plus mini Lum at 56 here. So in this case, the claps started predictively far before, like they're starting at the same time or whatever. But that's the kind of time you need to catch a low melon with thunderclap.
Yeah.
I would also like to submit my complaints to the board. Should this grab Lum? Yes.
I'm guessing
yes,
it's
it
been longer.
should. oh, it's so sad.
The moment I land, just not quite far enough.
Yeah, so the stuff works out there. It's fine that it didn't hit. Rook doesn't like actively get punished for it either, which is certainly okay. So in this situation, get a clap on a mini Lum. Lum uses jackpot. This is not a correct grab cancel in any situation. I'm thinking maybe I was holding up and mashing C because I was like, I'll just earthquake it, and then I grabbed and looked like a fool. But
oh, interesting. Normally, if you hold jump and mash, you can't do a thing on the ground, but because you were cancelling,
it's canceling, right? There's no valid use for jump there. So
I never thought of that.
it's kind of funny, yeah. So it's not the end of the world that the grab cancel happened, but it definitely makes this
Makes the
jackpot a lot more advantageous. So
I would make like 2 items and then I'm earthquaked out at full screen,
so
which is potentially worth it. But now it's all the items.
yeah,
and I get
items, no knockdown. So that, on the whole, though, that's a good example, I think, for Lum folks thinking about which super to use. This seemed like a pretty normal jackpot. You didn't get directly punished for it either, but Lum got almost nothing out of it in the end, aside from an empty super meter. Like,
because ultimately what it was full screen item tosses.
I walk into the fireworks. It's like a sort of bonus.
Not been 1 shit damage total.
Yeah, point of damage off of a super is not probably quite what Lum wants with the no spacing. So
Yeah, spending all that meter.
yeah, good. Like trying to push your limits and get a really good feel for exactly how long you can walk forward is also important. Getting hit by fireworks is not so good, but take your games to learn them.
Yeah, it's not a tournament,
Mm-hmm.
and even in a tournament, there's still chances to learn.
Yeah. So
Just maybe don't throw around a way to doing a jackpot trade.
mhm.
That may be a thing I have done.
at 47 here, we've got a mini lum, and then Rook decides to jump, which isn't... It's interesting, because after seeing a mini lums out here, jumping could be okay. I think Vines might be really winning here if I did it early, because it breaks the mini lum and hits proper lum.
And then you get the sleight of hand where no one...
Where'd the mini lum go? The
and
thing...
it's really on the ground.
The if Rook does a Vines and it doesn't break the mini lum here, which is also possible, then this is pretty safe for lum. Rook doesn't like get oaky stuff. He gets bonked by the mini lum and just kind of gets to approach a little bit.
I mean, terrifying case, Rook gets hit by the mini lump and it hits him forwards.
Yeah, I don't think that ends up happening here, but it'd be would be pretty
I've
ideal.
seen it.
If you cross up, that's the key. The in this case though, Vines is fine. Getting a knockdown would be fine. If you're worried about the mini lum, you can also use jump super here and let the cinematic kind of take care of things for you as well. So Rook had a lot of tools here that didn't really come into play. So as the round continues, Lum gets items, uses them to push for space effectively, I think is a good example.
Yeah, Rift Titan toss, but that's
Yeah.
fine. Those happen. And I
Yeah.
wasn't doing anything else in that time anyway.
So in this whole space of stuff, Rook can predictably fish for earthquakes on item tosses, but the thing I was watching for more in the situation before the fireworks happened is you can try and do stuff, but it's more about trying to keep Rook open so that he has maybe an opportunity to earthquake dice if something like a bomb comes up, or punish it in other ways. So it was well timed by Janet here to get the dice set up, get that kind of coverage. But
Fireworks are good for that.
yeah, at this point dice are set up. Rook's at pretty low HP, so committing to some risk to try and get through this can be okay. Lum getting to set up more mini lums could definitely spell the end. I believe the way this ends, though, is with a learning landslide. Learning landslide. So, it's sometimes good to do things and see if they work. Landslide, I have a lot of... I like it a lot better in many zoner matchups compared to against Lum, and this is a fine example. There's just a lot of things on the field that can ruin it, especially when you look back here. It's that idea, if my knee can somehow hit this mini lum and
Which it
destroy
almost did.
then I...
Wait it. Oh, wait, no.
So
that
the thing
wait.
I won't need to check is maybe the mini lum's just always low profile the first hit of landslide. I never properly checked.
We saw it happen before.
Yeah, I'd have to verify for sure, but like I got hit out of my hit stop here. Otherwise, I think the odds of like trading favorably are pretty high. So something that you learn from, but always interesting to figure out. So that kind of sums up that interaction. Lum and Rook has a lot of weird interactions that come up, but
Yeah, this is something you learn a lot from experience.
the key things are to focus, for Rook anyway, you want to really focus on understanding what things Vines covers and what things Earthquake covers, and trying to get a feel for how your opponent adapts to what's going on in the game. Whenever they toss an item and it's sitting like a fireworks, they don't have incentive to stay on the ground anymore. They should just wait and react to you doing earthquake stuff. You need to lean off of it. You want to adapt your choices to suit the things that the risks that Lum will expose himself to during play.
And from the Lum side, what you want to do is you want to know when you... There are many...
Oh, you're cutting out again.
Yeah, okay. You want to know when you can item... When out of the many can't toss, and when you can dice.
Right.
Those are the fundamentally important things in the matchup.
Yep.
Everything else is opportunistic. There are specific situations you can learn, and I would advise learning them, but you learn those from practice.
Yeah, knowing when to toss, when to dice, and like, and I think understanding your sort of anti-air tools too is pretty vital.
Yes.
Rook getting to jump around is pretty rough to deal with.
Yeah, so anti-air, dice, item toss, and round start options in general.
Yep, very decisive. If both players are strong in their advantage states, then the opener just gets more and more important, as one player just taking a little bit of advantage can definitely snowball. All right. Well, that
We made it through the replays.
yeah. Whew. Only 12 more to go now.